We call the meeting to order. This is the April meeting of the Addison Northwest School District. And I am looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. I have one strike, which is action item C. We will have to wait and do that in May. Does anyone have anything else? Changes, additions, subtractions? No? All right, so all in favor of approving the agenda with that one strike, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Awesome. Welcome to our public. I think Lori brought those. Thank you, Lori, for the cookies.
Thank you, Lori.
Any other public comment besides?
I actually have some, so I have a concern about the amount of public comment. I know there's something, no one here today, some days there are, that it's just at the very beginning, because most other boards, at least the two in this county, do public comment at the beginning for things that are not on the agenda. And then anything on the agenda, if somebody has something to comment on, it would be given a little bit of public comment time at that time as well. Because I know that as a union member, we were sent a letter from the boards because we made a comment, but we made it before we heard your budget report. So if you had given us an opportunity in the budget report, we probably wouldn't have made the comment. So if we had an opportunity, it would be, and that's what the other two districts do, as does Chittenden County. So just giving you that feedback. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from the public tonight?
That brings us to what are you?
I'm just,
Presentations to the board, which we don't actually have a presentation, do we? Okay, but attached to Joanne's report, we had some information on Robert's rules, open meeting law, and public records requests. Some of the things in there have actually changed since that presentation was prepared. So hopefully we'll talk about those a little more later in the year. But did anyone have any questions about what was included? I can.
And when we go, we'll probably be going over this every year, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have this presentation on the website instead of in our packet. Just makes it, I mean, it was 72 pages, so it was a lot, and everybody else could look at it if it was on the web. I can't get
So do we need to know what has changed, or it's not that big?
Well, I know that there was a change in the open meeting law regarding serial communication amongst members of a board, that would also constitute a meeting. So if you're talking to someone or emailing someone and then they're emailing or talking to the next person in a series like that would be considered a meeting as well. I know there was a change in ruling around executive sessions for negotiations. Those are the two that I'm.
what was that
thinking of.
change?
So there was a ruling, I know it's not a law, it's just a ruling that negotiations actually do not constitute a meeting, and therefore open meeting law does not apply.
Got it.
Those are the two
Sitting around
changes
it.
that I know of.
People are
from
sitting
what
around
we
it
have.
talking, but of course, it's
Right.
not a meeting.
Lori?
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Travis, can you tell me what the password is for Addison? The ACS one is not working. Well, I'm not able to connect to the Google Drive.
You might have to go to a regular browser and then click accept or something.
A regular browser and click accept, okay?
You do at the high school. I didn't need to, but
Accept the terms and conditions.
Our new superintendent.
Good? All right.
Sorry to be such a pain.
All right, so I think we're up to board and committee reports. The superintendent report. Did you have anything to add, Joanne, to present? George?
I had a question about the section starting on page 8. It says, Director of Student Programs. I'm not sure who wrote it or what it's about, or,
So that would be from Stephanie's principal report.
okay.
I'm sure there'll be several questions.
Once we get to principal's report, if you want to hang on to that and ask it when she comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had also, is that, I mean, if this ever happens again, it would be nice to have this letter. Actually, I had no idea who it was from or what it was for. It took me like, I know it is now. But it took quite a while for me to figure out what the heck was going on. So, anyway, be helpful to have some title at the top for the future.
Yes, information in context is helpful.
True.
But, so for the superintendent incidental report, there are comments around the director of learning position, the school calendar for this year, and the remainder of this year and next year, the Roberts rules, there was a link to the draft work plan for next year that came out, which actually I have a question about that. I believe our motion approved 7 third Mondays. And I think there were more than 7 on there, but.
There are,
we
and
can-
that, you're going to have, yeah, we'll
we
take
can
some,
figure
that's
that
why it's
out.
in a draft form. We just
Yeah.
figured we would record all second Mondays just in case.
Okay, third Mondays.
Third Mondays,
But-
sorry. This is second meeting.
So
third.
everyone knows, they're not all, there will be some removed.
Just to keep us on our toes.
That's right. And community briefing on safety and security, crisis plan simulation, performance contract update.
So let me go back to the briefing. Mark Koenig will represent the board at the agenda building.
Thank you, Mark. RFP for legal services, side letter to the master agreement, follow-up with parent groups, and reports on policy. So does, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the second one is incomplete. That was my error. It was an incomplete thought. It was supposed to be reporting on D20, which is curriculum. And what I meant to say is that there is limited information in your annual report, and in the absence of a curriculum, of a director of learning, that report is not going to be complete for the current year.
Yes, Larry, sorry.
We, not the full scope of curriculum work. We took buckets of responsibilities and delegated them out to a variety of consultants, including the management of the grants. But the overarching responsibility, all of the responsibilities of the director of learning, no.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Do we, so this is a follow-up, it's not mentioned here, but just, are we progressing the right way? Are things going better than they were when we last heard from Z about healthcare?
Are they going better?
Are we in a better spot here, or?
I can tell you that every situation I am aware of, because people are copying me on the emails, there are still questions that are coming up. We are still in the middle of a transition year. I can tell you that Z is personally handling every question that comes up from the teachers and trying to find immediate answers. Some are easier than others, but no, it's not. We're not over the hump yet. We're still experiencing some challenges.
And that's not just our challenges. These are challenges with Blue Cross Blue Shield as well as the contractor future planning.
Correct. Which is now data path. We're transitioning away from future planning.
Right. The challenges are statewide.
Right. Yes.
Right. Yes. So there was a, sorry, there was a note in our email body from Chris Leopold about, so there's 2 versions of the draft warning included in our packet, and the difference is that one of them includes a motion to commingle the votes, and the other one does not. Can you give us some background about how we might decide that?
So that's been a question from districts that have unified, you know, how they're counting their votes. And we experienced last time that each of the towns count the votes and they give Glory their numbers and Gloria reports the aggregate. We learned recently that the legislature may be enacting a statute about that, but I do not know where it's at in the process. So the question is, do you want to ask the voters to weigh in on that? Or do you want to wait unless and until the legislators enact a new law that will require commingling of votes?
Because you think it's coming.
I do think it's coming.
So does
Okay.
the state.
And the law would be that the votes should be commingled?
Correct.
In unified districts, okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
I was a little confused about, I think it was May 14th and May 15th, that two different voting days?
So when you have an informational meeting, you open up the meeting to the public, right, for discussing your articles. And that it still remains that the meeting gets delayed until the following day when the voters actually vote on the articles. That's how it usually happens.
Okay. So that doesn't mean that we're going to have polls open 2 days in a row?
No.
Okay, that's what I was,
No.
thanks.
It would go from the informational meeting in the evening to the following evening when the polls close.
Okay.
George?
I'm just curious, are the ballots the same in all the towns?
Do they look the same? Yes.
Okay.
Other than the name on the ballot.
Yep.
All right. Oh, Lori, sorry, I
Can we,
can't see you, Lori.
That's okay. I'm imagining right now, the way it is, it's each town clerk and their poll people count the votes every night. If we commingle, do we have to assign someone?
Yes. That is actually the responsibility currently of the clerk.
It would be of the town. The towns would send two people from each town to one place, or the high school or our office, whichever, and they would count the votes, and the district clerk is there to oversee the counting.
That's what we do for Hannaford.
Hannaford does the same thing.
So all those ballots
Yes.
leave the town clerk's office and drive somewhere
Yeah.
else? But that's not the town clerk that does that, somebody else does it?
You get some, just of the piece, or you just get volunteers who are counters. They take the sealed bag, they drive it to Hannaford, they dump it on the pile, and everyone starts counting.
I think that it should be flowers.
Do we know why the state's, why is this happening?
Why is what happening?
Why is the state gonna ask, why are we doing that? Why are we suggesting this, and why is the state,
I can't answer what precipitated this at the state. I can only imagine that it was asked by unified school districts, because some people do, you have to address this in your articles of agreement. But the problem for us becomes this: we have 5 towns. You don't want your towns competing for who voted in the budget and who did not. We are a single school district now. We should be counting the votes as a single entity, not as separate towns.
So I get that, though. I wonder, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but I wonder if it's also a useful bit of information to have, the people in Waltham really hated the budget. Then we could ask the people in Waltham why they hated the budget. Sometimes we know these things, sometimes we don't know these things. So I'm just wondering
It's really up to the board. You can add that article or not. I just wanted you to know that I think it probably will be addressed in a different way.
And the other piece on the article that we can, we can change any of it, but there was an article to elect the moderator, treasurer, and clerk.
That's correct.
So we currently have, and it said for a year,
But-
so
For the rest of the year.
for the rest of the year.
You can wait, because the statute says that if you fail to do that, you don't do that at your annual meeting, the same individuals will remain in that role
Right.
until and unless.
Right. But if we did it now, then
It
would
would
they
go-
be
it
for
would go through-
1 year, till April?
March.
No, it would be
So it's less
until
than a
the
year.
annual meeting.
Well, it doesn't say that. Okay. Yeah, so I think we could probably scratch that one too, but we can talk about it when we get there. George?
It seems as though the path run right now is to count at the town level, but report as a unified level?
Yes.
I guess I'm wondering why we can't continue that practice.
We can.
Ken?
Okay.
We can't. So when we get to the motion about accepting the warning, we can talk about which, if we want that article on there or not.
I have
Yep.
another question on a different matter.
Yeah, anything for Joanne's report?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
Me too. How about one more?
the legal services, I'm wondering why we're doing this, why we're doing it now, and would it just be for 1 year? Would it be for longer? I saw that the board chair is supposed to be making a decision about whether or not to continue, but so if we, I wasn't surprised, but I was surprised by this, so if you could give.
So the board, there's nothing that requires the board to do an RFP for legal services. And in fact, I'm not aware that you've ever done it. You've had the same attorney in place for many, many years. I was asked to consider this when I was working with the negotiations committee, and I'm bringing forward an example RFP should you all decide that that's the route you want to take.
And it's best practice to, usually to RFP for these type of services from time to time, right?
We just haven't, that's why I was not.
Right.
I was surprised by the depth
Scope.
of the RFP.
Yeah.
There was a lot of questions there.
Was that a standard form?
We borrowed that from South Burlington.
Okay, thank you.
It, really doesn't pay to
No.
create your own if someone else has an example out there. And we thought it was a comprehensive example.
Okay. John, did you have a question?
Yes. So on the wellness report, so there's one part that I'm not, I think it's fine, report or about, annually and what's going on and the policies related. But there was one part, an assurance that the district's guidelines for reimbursable meals are not less restrictive than regulations and guidelines issued for schools in accordance with federal law. I really don't know what that means, but we want that information. And if it's not in here, can we get whether we are at the next one, at our next meeting, whether we in fact are in compliance? And then this report, I would say, would be complete.
Yes, thank you for the wellness report. There was a lot of good information there. With the proposed budget, will we be in line with the physical education days required, or still not?
By how far?
No, we're still not? Was that the answer?
Right. I haven't looked at Lynn's report, but I don't believe we will be, and it's due in part to scheduling issues. That's fact.
Middle school.
Wait, high school PE is a requirement at the high school level. Middle school, there's conflicts between scheduling PE and scheduling the other, I'm going to call them unified arts, we don't call them that, but specials, for sports, and rotating groups through and making all those, just fitting it all in. And while also making sure students have adequate academic time. Reading, writing. I can't keep that.
Can I ask it?
Well, it says, right, physical activity, we require at least 30 minutes of physical activity opportunities for all students throughout the day,
Every
which
day.
includes pre- and post-school day activities.
Well, our after-school activities are open to all students at at the middle level. Kids have Spark every day, but if you're talking about scheduled PE time in isolation, we aren't doing that right now.
I'm not sure
That's
that
not what it says.
requires
Yeah.
that.
Do we know what the requirement is? Right. And what is the requirement for physical education?
2 physical education classes per week,
Ah, and that's K to
K through 8.
8.
How about this? Let's find out exactly what we're doing, so
Yeah.
that we know how far away we are from meeting this or not.
Well, I
And-
think we know what we're doing, right?
We know what we're doing. We will report back to the board next month on the specific questions that John asked.
Yeah, like, let's just
Yeah, let's
see
lay
what
it out.
exactly it is.
Yeah.
In both physical activity and
physical-
physical education.
Correct.
That way we know.
Yes, Christina, actually.
I just have a couple of questions. Joanne, on the part where you talked about summer school?
Yes.
Stay tuned for more details. Would
Yeah.
that be next month or?
It will be ongoing. What I can tell you now is that we've had more than several meetings. Actually, we had a pretty large meeting the other day, including the technology people, because summer school's not the only thing, as you know, that goes on in our schools. It's a time for us to renew and reboot what's going on in the computers and reprogram or program new computers. So that has to be, we can't have staff operating the way that they have in the existing buildings at the elementary school and the high school. Currently, we are looking at moving our elementary summer program to Ferrisburg, and we're looking at moving our technology staff to Addison because we can receive packages here much more easily. And that's about as far as we've gotten at this point. We are in the process of establishing where the food service could operate out of, because you know we have a very busy summer food program. And so Kathy's also been involved in the meetings. It could be that we would use the Ferrisburg kitchen, but there are rules around where you deliver the meals and where the meals can be created. So we're looking at some waivers for that to happen.
Isn't that kitchen getting a hood?
Yes, it is. And we talked about it. We talked about a different schedule that they might not be
They could
totally
stagger
finished.
it or something.
We're going to have to stagger it. yes.
Well, in delivery, there's a lot of kids that walk to get those meals, so.
So there's going to be increased bus transportation because of that. So we're
Yeah. And is the pool
figuring it
a
out.
possibility? Like, I had heard a conversation about,
Yeah, we've had some crazy ideas, like establishing a tent over by the pool, doing a barbecue over there, and all ideas are still on the table. We just haven't come to anything final. So I will keep you posted in the next 2 months. The draft plan isn't going to be draft for too much longer, so I imagine we're going to have much more detail ready for you next month.
great. And then my second question is related to you meeting with the parent groups.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could provide us with a summary of the feedback at
Yep.
some point?
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yep. How about if I do that next month, because I'm
That's
actually meeting with Addison parents tomorrow.
Yep.
So I'll be able to do that more from a higher standpoint.
Makes sense.
A
Great.
follow-up on those meetings.
Yeah.
And Lori, did you have a question?
Yeah, going back to the list. Improve and strengthen health services referral process. And I'm wondering if that's in the grade schools, or is that just the high school? This is on CAS. It is K through 12? So do we have health services referral in the grade schools now?
Well, we try and get every family connected with a family doctor.
Oh.
That's what a lot of that referral. And we also
Huh. How do we do that through the sign-in? I'm sorry, I could. But, okay, it's been a long time since my kids were in grade school. So I don't remember anything about this. I remember, when you fill out your forms every single year for every single child, every year. Anyway, you write the doctor and the dentist on it. Is that how they do this systematically? So the nurse goes through, and if there's no dentist and no doctor, they actually call or talk to the parent? Okay. So strengthening that would be, strengthening and improve it would be?
I think it would be, again, reinforcing all those connections that aren't happening, or maybe enabling families or having families feel more connected that way. I think that sometimes time gets in the way, so making those connections might be a little bit more challenging. I think another piece that we always look at is maybe developing the website a little bit more so that resources are available in that sense, where it's just even, you know, a click, you know, where families could go to anything. And again, I'm going back to health services, so local providers for, again, medical homes, dental homes, anything, mental services, anything that falls under our health and wellness, whole school, whole child model.
Okay. So then also, students removed from physical education class and physical activities for other classes and/or interventions. Does that mean I don't understand what that fully means. Are we advocating for students to be removed from physical education? Are we advocating for students not to be removed?
Well, we are advocating for students not to be removed, yes.
Okay.
Again, scheduling is very tricky, and sometimes students get pulled out of lots of different classes. We're just trying to state that physical education, health classes are just as important, and when we can, to try not to pull students out of those classes.
Just for next year, maybe put in help prevent students from being removed. The sentence itself wasn't
Sure. Again, these bullets are just snippets of what our conversations as a group were.
Okay.
And, yeah, sorry.
So like a brainstorming thing? Okay.
Next time.
Is the hiring of staff, appropriate trained, qualified, and/or licensed offer FTP position that retains and does not remisses, which, so.
Again, brief notes, so.
Okay.
Use those brief notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we having problems with FTEs in our physical education, or is this something that we're going to hear from next month?
Next month.
Okay. All right, I think there's one more. The next steps in creating SMART goals. SMART as in strategic, measurable, thank you. And does everybody know those? Okay, that's all right, they're cool. Is there a timeline?
For
The SMART goals will include action steps, a timeline, and how progress will be measured. I'm wondering if...
Well, the timelines will be based on what the action items that we choose, and that we have 2 more meetings already planned for the group to work on in May. One's at the beginning of May, one's at the end of May. So by the end of May, we should have everything complete.
And will it be like a Google doc on...
Share, yeah.
Right, so we can all see. And then last of the wellness thing is, did the school district, it was probably for you, did the school district reduce overall hours for nursing time for all the schools? Did we do an overall
Reduction? No.
And so we're getting the same amount of nursing hours for all the students now as we were last year, as we were the year before?
I'm sorry, the FTEs have changed from one school to another because of the number of students. So Ferrisburg is actually going to receive a little less time from a school nurse, and in Addison, they'll receive more time from a school nurse.
All right, so we have, any more questions for Joanne?
I wasn't quite finished, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sorry.
How is the time allocated between the schools? Is it based strictly on student population?
It is based on student population and need.
Okay, and then is Jay considered part of administration still? He's the director of guidance, is that the term,
No, it's not the title, it's the director of school counseling and student programming.
So I did have a question on the, with Diana's letter and the director of learning, and we're talking about a whole bunch of people that are being hired or not hired. I went through all this and I got an assistant principal for VUHS, a director of guidance for VUHS, a director of student programs, a curriculum director, a director of learning, a dean of students, and a superintendent.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of, and I don't know which is who.
Yeah, I think there's a little clarification needed on some job titles, but I think that Joanne said we would do that under Stephanie's report.
We're going to do all of them on Stephanie's, okay?
Diana, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, can you explain the memorandum of understanding?
Sure, the teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so currently in the master agreement, and I'm sorry, I don't have the language in front of me, I'm gonna summarize, but there's some language to suggest that we cannot contract out for coursework for student classes that would reduce a teacher, okay? We have not reduced teachers. We have not been able to find a health teacher. And so we have a difference of opinion about what we've done, but we're in agreement that we need to be clear about what we're doing now, from now until the end of the year. And so I worked with Rose and Susan Oliveira. We came up with some language that we were both in agreement with that basically said we want to honor the master agreement, and we have a plan from now until June where our students will receive their health class online, and we understand that that's not necessarily what's going to happen going forward. That's something that the board, the negotiations council, will have to take up with the Teachers Association.
I can read that. It's Article 4.9 in the teachers' agreement, and it says, to ensure that there are no subcontracting of bargaining unit work, ANWSD will not contract with any company or agency for any courses offered to students that would replace an existing teacher.
We didn't have a teacher to replace. We advertised for the position. We hired an individual. He did not last the year. And we found ourselves in a situation where we had to honor what the students need for graduation. So we came up with what we thought was a reasonable plan because we didn't have any suitable candidates for the job.
Okay. More questions for, yes?
Staying on the same line. Is it okay? What does the SD do to ensure that teachers fulfill their contracts? We had a contract with this person and they just left.
Yes, we did.
I'm just wondering in general. I'm not asking anything for.
I would not let a teacher, that's not my practice, to let teachers out of their contracts in the middle of the school year. There were extenuating circumstances.
Okay. So normally we would have
Correct.
something else happen. And I just wondered why Anta wasn't consulted because we didn't think we were in violation.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready to move on to the business manager's report?
I have some other questions for you. I sent all these questions yesterday.
You have more questions for Joanne's report?
I do.
All right, shoot.
Just a minute, hang on, let me get there.
Sort of quick, though, that
Damn.
would be.
Okay, I'm doing the best I can, Sue. This document is 72 pages long, and...
Well, Joanne's is only 2 pages, so that's where we're at.
No, it's a lot longer than that, actually. She's many pages. Who is working, seeking alternatives? Never mind, I don't want to ask it. I don't see the side letter to the master agreement. This is the grievance we were just talking about. Okay, I thought it was something different. So after school, following up with the parent group's after-school care program at FCS is beginning in the fall of 2018. Will ACS also have an after-school program? Because I understood that the Eagle Care is not continuing.
That's not necessarily true. If we can maintain a certain number, we will have all 3 elementary schools run a program, but it has to be financially lucrative, and we're still in the process of evaluating that. We've had a minimal number of students, and it's challenged us to keep the program open.
So would it be possible to allow the ACS students to go to Ferrisburg?
Oh, they would have access to a program. It
After
just
school.
might not run here because of the number of students.
Okay, so
Yes.
they will have access to
They
a program,
will.
it just may not be here in this building?
Correct.
Thank you.
But we will try hard to maintain this location.
All right, I think that may be it. Thank you.
So Elizabeth sent a lot of information about financials. Do folks have questions for Elizabeth? Or Elizabeth, do you want to say anything in addition?
I
before?
don't have anything in addition to the actual report that I sent out unless people have questions, but I do also have kind of the presentation of the surplus deficit information.
Okay. So do people have questions for Elizabeth about anything other than the surplus? Yes, Lori.
Sorry, I gotta get somewhere else. Geez, I'm girl. I wanted to know what the budget effect was on the 3 things that were in your report. And I think I got an email from you that says,
basically my email back indicated I don't actually have dollar figures associated with those. Those are kind of just like a heads up to you guys. If I actually, had a dollar figure that I felt was anywhere close to what that value would be, I would have made sure they were encumbered into the reports that I give out. So I try not to estimate anything for, year end, and if I have the dollar figure, I definitely would have it encumbered.
So my question, though, is if we have these, at least 3, and I think there were others, the $12,000, $8,000 plus the $2,500 for the superintendent's position search, and also $1,200 that we were adding for, or we may be adding. Those 2 things aren't in the budget, and the 3 things that you mentioned in the are also not in the budget. And we're so it appears it's very likely we could go into a deficit position.
So the 3 things I think I noted in my business manager report were administrators receiving an additional 1% of their salary. They only received 2% at the beginning of the year, and that 3rd% was held off. And now that all the contracts have settled, we're going to retroactively give them that additional percent. So that dollar value is not large. You're talking a handful of people. We just don't have it calculated exactly what the dollar value is, which is why it's not encumbered yet. But that actually was budgeted. So just to clarify, that was actually budgeted. It just wasn't encumbered yet, if that makes any sense. The second piece about, I think, was the playground equipment needed at Ferrisburg. That's in order to move the preschool program over. I believe we're looking for quotes on how much that's going to cost.
Kara, what did you say? 14,000?
Okay, so that's actually lower than what I originally thought it was going to be. So that sounds like that's lower. So that sounds like we've got a more firm dollar amount on that. And the last one was regarding food service. We're monitoring their revenue. The expenditures are staying within the budget that we have built, but we had a slight concern about whether or not the revenue was going to keep up that pace, and we don't have a firm dollar amount on that one.
Okay. So I did a little analysis of where we're at, the difference between what we had left over, the 1.2 million in the February 28th report, down to the 1.1 something million, an $84,000 reduction.
Yep.
Is approximately what it was. So I figure, okay, we've got 3 more months if we do an average of $84,000 a month. And then we add these, the $15,000 for the playground, the superintendent search, et cetera. We're down to somewhere around $750,000 unencumbered expenditures that we have to spend between now and the end of the year, and I'm questioning whether we should be doing something about that. Meaning, I don't want to add any more to your plate, but I don't want to go into a deficit either, right? But
I don't
mean,
believe that $750,000, as you're walking into 3 months left of the year, is something to be concerned about having a deficit. I believe that we have worked very hard to encumber as the months have progressed. If you watch the progression of how much that has gapped between months, and now it's down to $84,000 difference in 1 month, that shows you how hard we've worked at really trying to figure out every expense that you guys normally have and getting it encumbered. I'm not sure that was always done in the past. And I'm thinking of even simple things like stipend agreements that go, Glory gets a request for a stipend agreement. She does up a contract, it goes to payroll. In the past, the payroll position did not encumber those funds into your payroll. They waited until it actually got paid and then just paid it. So there's a little bit of a difference there, and now instead we're encumbering all those as we get the contract on them so that you're projecting forward a little more. So the hope is that as you progress through your year, those end 3 months are not going to see sizable jumps in your expenditures. And the only way that that could change is if you had an emergency event that you did not budget or plan for, or if there is some contract out there that we didn't even realize we have and it shows up on our doorstep unencumbered.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing all work. It's much easier to see what's happening. It's much clearer. And everything that you highlighted in your report makes sense and is clear and fact checkable, which is fantastic.
Right.
And thank you for including all the information about all of our funds.
Oh, yeah.
That's really
You've got
really
every
helpful.
single one in there.
Thank you.
And I agree with your, coming up with 750,000, I'd say you're about right at this point. That's probably pretty accurate. But like I said, it's not concerning to me. I'm comfortable.
Awesome, yes. There was one more thing for Joanne. I was wondering about the community briefing and safety, security, and crisis plan simulation. Thank you, not stimulation.
Not stimulation.
It will be stimulating, but it is not a stimulation. I just wondered if this is something that the board should speak to, or we should just let
No,
you
it's
do your
about we're going to be doing a tabletop that will allow us to practice our own internal procedures when it relates to a crisis. And that's not something we really want to make public because they're internal procedures. So it's the administration's opportunity to work with all of the first responders in hopefully a real life situation and really test our knowledge. We will have observers there giving us feedback concerning how we respond to the tabletop exercise, and we will be rating ourselves to
And by
determine.
tabletop, you mean you'll be literally sitting at a table? You're not going to be outside with dead bodies or anything?
No.
I just wondered about the, what's that?
I said I'll probably be there.
Will you? Dead body and all?
All right, so
And then then I just wanted to say that that's also community, it's also Green Up Day that day, just so you know.
We'll be out at noon.
time to clean up. Are we ready to hear Elizabeth's report on, and recommendations on the,
One last question with Elizabeth. Were all those funds, all those deficit funds, and all those funds that you listed, are they in the financial statements?
In what way? Like the ones that you receive monthly
which
here,
financial?
or in an audit report?
No, not
financial?
in financial statements.
They're definitely in the audits, yes.
Yeah.
They, traditionally, most of them, you'll find towards the end of the audit, there'll be spreadsheets that list each fund separately in columns. I can't remember what page it would be, somewhere in the 60.
How many different ones did you pass around? Is this the same?
It should be all the same.
It's all one, right?
Should be a little
But it's the
packet.
same as- It's different than this?
It's in there.
What's that?
Nope, it's in there.
It's the same.
Yep. So I think if you flip over that first page, you're going to see the second page of that one with a total.
It's a big
Yeah.
packet.
Yeah,
Potato grant.
yeah.
Got it?
Got it.
All
Data
right,
grant.
so this is our fund balance sheets coming around.
Okay.
These are our fund balance sheets. So Elizabeth, are you
So
going
wait
to
till
talk
everybody
us-
has one.
Talk
Yep.
us through the proposed action item? Is that what you're? I know,
And if
just
there's
wanted-
extras and anybody else wants to have one and doesn't have one, they're welcome to have one.
Here you go. I'll share mine.
Relinquishers.
Yeah.
Because you've got yours on there. Okay. I just didn't know how many people actually, would have their computers and be able to see them.
Got enough rows?
I like the, yeah, that's
I know, that one came out a few years ago.
All right.
Oh, let's, please.
Please.
It'll be worth all of our time.
So,
Okay,
I have a-
Elizabeth.
Before we start, I have a question about if you look at the $784,000 worth of deficits, and then we've got on the second to the last page is the surplus allocation calculation.
Yep.
And you've got minus the amount allocated to the food services of 423.96, 961, choose them. And then you're allocating the fund remaining balances of 343,343. They don't add up to that 784,246. It's off by like $18,000 or something like that.
It's off
But
by, so it doesn't add up to the 784,246. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
I'm going to walk you through it.
Okay.
But there's another column there beside it that says
I see.
funding with surplus.
I saw
And that's the
60.
number that it actually backs up to. Does
Oh, okay.
that make sense?
And then you're going to get to the 87,921 too?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth, please.
Okay, so the first page of this is actually your fund balances, any of them that were ending FY17 with a surplus balance. So I listed them all out, the whole entire account number, so you can see what it looks like in this is literally a dump out from our accounting system into Excel, and then just kind of made bigger and more easy to understand. Yeah, because it comes out very small, believe it or not. It's actually quite tiny. So the first three funds, basically, what I try to do is give you some notes as to where I'm at with the surplus balances. I was able to get through all of the deficit balances as far as figuring out, whether they're the balance that we definitely have, if there was anything I could do about them in the current year. But with the surplus balances, we're still working on some of them. So what you'll see in the notes is, if I know what they are confirmed to be, I'm saying that. Those are saying carry forward is confirmed. That means we definitely have the funds, it's accurate, we're allowed to keep it, and it's been rolled forward into the current fiscal year. The three at the top are to be used in surplus allocation FY19. That is the combination of your 1.6, and I do know the number, 1.629875 surplus that was quoted on January 10th when we first started really honing in on how much we had for a surplus. Some of these, you'll see a few of the capital improvement funds. Those were ones where I'm saying some of this is spent in FY18 for your approved paving projects. You had 2 projects at the end of FY17 where you actually approved bid proposals to have those projects done and paid for out of your capital improvement funds. They didn't actually happen until FY18. So we basically are allowed to carry forward those capital improvement funds out of these funds and pay for those projects, or at least a portion of them. Yes.
The individual
I mean,
boards.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. They were. Yep.
Because I didn't remember.
But because we also, I believe you also voted as a consolidated district that all those monies
Yep.
that were within an individual school would stay with that school.
Yep.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So there wasn't quite enough in the Ferrisburg one to pay for all of that paving project, but with the Virgins Union Elementary School, there is enough to pay for all of it, and there will be a slight balance on that one left, even as we exit FY18. Some of the ones you see here, the first one I see on the list that says under research, I'm still trying to research. Now, when I say that, I'm trying to figure out for sure whether we owe that money back to somebody. That's really the bottom line. Are we allowed to carry it forward? Does it make sense? Or do we owe a grantor money back? I think that's the only different
We'd
one.
all
You'll
like
see
to
all
know about
kinds
the
of them.
potato grant.
Yeah, we just have to know about it.
So which one do I? Oh, yeah, and that's under research. I don't even know where that came from.
Don't spend more than an hour researching it.
What's that? Is that where it started out, like 8 years ago?
Awesome.
So the question is, do they want their $50 back? Okay, I will do that. Lisa Sprague, yeah. So there is, I did actually put a note on here.
Oh, sorry about the Miracle Grow. I can stop the research right at the end of the meeting.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's answered.
If anyone has any information.
And like
I'd love to hear it.
$490 of it should be encumbered, so, sorry.
Awesome.
That's
Sounds
off the
good.
plate.
Okay.
Look at all these answers.
It's awesome.
No, about the potatoes.
Because it's really hard hunting.
Just thank you for this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Amazing.
So my note at the bottom does also indicate if any of these funds are being spent or if I have updates on the research, because it sounds like I'm going to have some more information, I can update the board with a current balance as of the May board meeting. And we can do that on an ongoing, regular basis. We can decide how often you want to see that. So that's the surplus balances. The next page is your deficit balances. These also are as of the end of fiscal year 17. You'll see the deficit balances column is what you actually ended FY17 with. The next column over is what I am projecting that we will fund with the surplus from the general fund. The reason why there's a slight difference is that balance out to the right. And there are $2 figures out there that say grant reports were revised in December 2017 and the revenue is in FY18. That means I was able to recoup $16,942 of these deficits in this year by revising a grant report from last year that I got in time in order to get that money back out from errors in how they were originally reported.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome,
So,
appreciate that.
So that's kind of where we're at with that. I don't know if there's any specific questions about any particular funds that you see on there. Sure. Lori?
So so you have some surpluses in construction for ACS and capital improvement for FCS and capital improvement for UES. But we also have deficits for the same kind of things. Why don't we net them?
So when I talked with the auditors about that situation, what we were not able to determine, but we can assume, is if there were two different funds set up, a construction, and they were labeled differently, a construction and a capital improvement, and they were set up at different times and started accruing balances at different moments in time over the past, you can't just assume that they are for the exact same purpose. And so I could not net them together.
But we're assuming,
because a capital improvement fund can clearly go forward. A construction is traditionally like you had a construction project and you specifically funded that project. So if it went over in a deficit, you probably should have funded that with your general fund during that year, rather than rolling it forward and keeping a deficit balance.
Well, as long as we're pointing fingers, the potatoes.
So,
Is there any other questions about that specifically? And then I'll walk you through the final calculation in the last page.
no, but just to clarify, so the positive balances would remain with the schools as per our district-wide agreement. And we are in a fortuitous position where we have surplus that we can take care of the deficits,
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so the next page is me basically walking you guys through how we're going to allocate that 1.629875 of general fund surplus money that was available as of June 30th of 17. You can see that we've got the $650,000 that we slated to be towards the operating budget for FY19's budget. Then we have the food service deficit, which we already agreed to allocate funds to alleviate that deficit of $423,961. Then I kept that separate, so you have to add those two numbers together to get to what's on the other page. But I did that because we already had that clearly marked as a deficit that we were funding in a previous meeting, so I wanted to make that clear. That $343,343, that is the combination of the rest of those deficit balances that we are funding. The next one, which is what Lori asked about, minus the amount included in the 17-18 budget submittal to the Agency of Education in June of 2017, a figure of $87,921. This is the number that on your revenue reports that you see every month, there's a deficit in the education fund line. That is my understanding from Brad James at the Agency of Education when we discussed this. It was not originally in our budget submittal at the preliminary budgets that are submitted early in the year. But when the business manager in that fiscal year submitted the final budgets in June, she put in that you had a potential surplus of $87,921 and reduced the education funding that you were going to receive in your current fiscal year. So if I was to use that money again out of your surplus, you'd be using it twice. So I can't use it twice. We basically need to use $87,921 out of the 1.629 in 18 because it was already submitted to the Agency of Education that we were using it this year. And then the bottom line dollar figure is what is left after you fund all of those. It equals $124,650. It is the amount that we are recommending to allocate to a new Addison Northwest School District Capital Projects Fund. It's pending the voter approval of the establishment and the appropriation of those funds. We actually do have the resolution, the amended resolution attached just for you guys to look at. We're not making it an action item tonight. It's going to be an action item on your May 14th meeting, just so you all have time to read through it, ask questions. We wanted to put it out there for at least one meeting because we don't have to act on it immediately. But basically, those dollar figures are all just reiterated exactly the same way you've seen them in this. I think it's very important to note the note that I have at the bottom of the surplus allocation calculation. I'm saying that basically these deficit balances are in your FY17 dollars. We are using FY17 surplus dollars to fund them, but they'll still show up as deficit balances in your FY18 audits. The reason for that is when you get a surplus and you get an audit report that says you have surplus dollars, you're rolling those into your FY19 budget and figuring out what to do with them. That means they still sit there. I can't book transactions in FY18 that alleviate these. So they will sit until July 1st of fiscal year 19. That makes sense.
Item number 1, on the last page, is...
The last page as in the resolution, or this one?
The last page in the packet, the resolution.
Okay, yep.
So the $650,000, which will be rolled, correct me if I say any of this wrong, will be rolled forward into our, to pay for things that we need to pay for in the coming year.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Okay.
Okay, so what it's really doing is it's saying it's actually reducing the funds that we're asking the education fund
Yes.
and the taxpayers to put in towards our budget.
Right.
Because we already have that $650,000 in hand, and we don't need them to raise
Yeah.
more taxes.
Okay, good. So that'll be really good news for the voters, except fiscal year 1920.
You are absolutely correct.
Right,
It's
we
going
have
to
to
be
figure out-
difficult for us to figure out what we do now because we
talked
won't
about
have
that during
surplus
the budget
dollars.
building
Right,
process.
so a
It's gonna put
surplus
us-
is a good thing, except that it's not a good
Correct.
thing. Because it
Right.
means that 2 years from now, we have
It's
to
a-
figure out how to
right.
raise that extra $650,000,
Right.
all other things being equal.
It's a prudent thing, because if we have that sizable surplus and we're funding all of our deficits and we still have that left, that's what we should do, is give it back to the taxpayers.
Right.
But yet, yes, it creates
Okay, so that will be a
an anomaly
communication
for the
challenge
next,
perhaps for
the next
us
year. Definitely.
moving through. That was my question. Thank you for
Yep.
clarifying.
Does anyone else have any questions on these fund balances and this resolution that we will be voting on next month?
Who are you?
I know, so surprising. So we have 2.656 million in surplus. We're using 1.629875. We're tentatively, we're asking the taxpayers for us to use most of that 1.6, or all of it anyway, 1.629. That leaves a net surplus of 1,227,000. Does that mean we have like, all these add up to $1,227,000? So does that mean?
As long as
we might
Excel is
have-
adding right.
Assuming I'm adding right, yeah. It's in a.
And our accounting program, yes, it is.
Does that mean, yeah, I mean, does that mean we've got something like almost $1 million that we could use for,
Well,
I mean, these.
potentially. So as we
Okay.
talked about with the surplus balances, you know, one of them is 240,000 that's in your capital improvement for VUHS. That's meant to stay there unless you have an emergency and the board approves using those funds. So there's a specific purpose to it. Another one is scholarships at VUHS. Those can't be used unless you're granting a scholarship to a student, and
Right.
you only grant so much per year out of those scholarship funds. So that's $232,000 of that figure. So there's 400 and something right there, 460. Yeah, you have some of the paving projects, which some of those are being used in this year, so those won't still be there. You have the transition grant, that's also got some funds that are being used in FY18, which is why I want to update you guys with those balances where we are now in the next meeting.
We were going to buy the ADS software, or not the ADS, the other one.
Yes, and some of it's been spent on some other already approved things that were transition grant stuff. Roland grant, you know, those are foundation grants that are given. They are allowed to be carried forward. Some of those are being spent in the current fiscal year, which is allowable. So, I mean, these things all, they have specific purposes, though, and they have to stay within those funds.
And there's not a lot of flexibility
Right,
in
you
these
can't
funds.
roll them into general fund and do something with them. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they're special funds. So, I don't know if we have the board, and this is a long ways down the road, I think, but I don't know if the board knows how to get funds out of any of these capital improvement accounts.
We could make capital improvements.
Well, of course we could, but, I mean, like, who determines what the capital improvement is? I just don't think that, at some point, it would be a bad idea for the board to have some rules and regulations about how to spend and what to spend.
The idea behind capital improvement funds is that they retain a positive balance, though, right? That's not really the same thing as running a surplus. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want a capital improvement fund to be at zero. You want
It's a
it to
reserve,
roll
yeah.
forward.
Well, we have had capital improvement funds that have been zeros for many, 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 many years.
But that's not good.
So I'm not saying it's, I'm just saying, Finn, all that we need to do is have some rules.
Okay.
That's all I'm suggesting.
Facilities committee.
Was doing that for the high school, and I don't, and I, when we've talked about this, and is George, no, George is left.
He had to go pick up his son.
That we assumed that this was part of our purview to bring proposals to the board to approve. But we should probably confirm that the board has given that authority to the facilities committee.
Is it in the charge?
It's not in the charge,
Okay.
so.
We could
maybe
add it
we
to
should
your
vote,
charge.
But we could add
Maybe
it to the
you
charge.
could- yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank
just
you.
one additional comment on that. I mean, I think part of the reason why you set up a capital improvements fund is also so that you can eventually set aside money in those funds over time. And eventually, when you have a sizable project that you really need to do on your building, you would vote to use those funds towards that rather than going out for a bond. I mean, that's
For a
the
smaller
goal,
bond, yeah.
rather than having to, every so many years, go out with a building project and borrow money. That would be the goal. The only other thing I can think of is if you have an emergency situation of something unplanned that you cannot afford to fund with your current year budget.
I also was thinking, aren't there billions of projects that are less than millions of dollars that we don't have in the budget, but we need to have done?
That adds up to more than $1 million.
Billions?
Right, so I know that when Ken spoke, that he was talking about getting a systematic review of all the buildings and trying to find out what is needed. So probably, I would think that he might have some recommendations as the buildings and grounds supervisor.
Thank you.
Once he finishes his thorough investigation. Does what Elizabeth has described make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I particularly appreciate leaf number 3, like the third sheet. I feel like that really lays everything out as far as I need to know.
Does anyone have any more?
I still think that I need some more education around reading budgets. So like we had last year, I think that would be great at some point in the future for those of us who are not as
We are supposed to have, yes.
great. Because my eyes get a little blurry, luckily I'm sitting next to Lori.
So the one, what is our responsibility in relation to the capital projects fund? And the warned article for, what I'm concerned about is the timing. What I'm not clear about is the timing in terms of, we're having a special election on the 15th, and we're warning, right? And we're warning that, we're making a decision about the warning tonight.
Correct?
If we don't, so we have to pass this action item next month before,
Yes, you definitely have to pass the action item in order for the vote to even take place.
and if we pass, right, for the vote to take place. But if we pass the action item on the 14th, we can have that election on the 15th.
Yes, but there is a
There's a
issue.
problem with the date. I don't know if you want to get into that now or when we discuss the warning.
So I think, I know we need to do this, but if we pass the warning, then we've already given our blessing to that amount anyway,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
True.
Because it's on there.
But you'll just officially have it as an action item on your next meeting.
Okay.
So now that we're all in suspense, what's the date?
Okay, so Lori's been contacting the town clerks to alert them to the fact that we're going to need an Australian ballot day, and we've been told that that would be very difficult in Virgins because it is
Tax property tax day and
sewer assessment day. So the volume of people coming in to do town business
is too high.
would be too high for them to split their staff to do both an Australian ballot vote and to take care of the community members.
Maybe that's the way to increase American voter turnout.
Yeah.
But they go to two different places because they.
It's not the
vote in
town offices.
They vote in the firehouse.
Firehouse, right.
They can take the records to the firehouse and do it all there.
Mark, you have any insight?
I was gonna say, I can talk to Joan and Mel and see if maybe we can pull in some of the Board of Civil Authorities people.
So we kind of have to know tonight, because, because
Because we're going to approve the warning.
we have to approve the warning.
And their suggestion was waiting 1 week till the following Tuesday to do the actual vote. So
So-
that means you'd have an informational meeting and a board meeting on the 14th, which is a Monday. And instead of having the actual vote the next day, you would be waiting a week till Tuesday and having the vote.
John thinks that's a good idea.
I mean,
His body language says.
I'm
So we're gonna have, the
Okay.
meeting would actually be open for a
We'd still do
week,
our
but we
meeting,
wouldn't-
we'd still do our informational, it's just that we wouldn't have the actual vote until a week later.
Well, we're trying to be sensitive to the
We're
board's
trying to, yeah. keep
night
the-
out.
Then we'd have
keep
two
the
meetings.
informational and all that the same date.
You have a superintendent search going on, and we know that there's a lot on your
Monday,
plates.
and there's the Monday meetings.
Yeah.
Of course, then you run into what kind of voter turnout we're gonna get. It's gonna be low to begin with, and now you're gonna have a week after the informational meeting.
All it takes is 3,
Well-
right?
I'm not sure.
I think
I
that's
can't
just the nature of
guarantee.
this special election, so.
Yeah, has the informational meeting traditionally rallied a lot of voters?
I would
just
suggest no.
In general.
No, but town meeting.
So we've had a lot of change in these communities, and I don't know how much people are paying attention, but that this is more change, right? We have an informational meeting on 1 week, and it just seems a little weird. And we have a second annual meeting, which we never have had before.
A second annual meeting?
It's just a special meeting.
Okay, we've had a special meeting, which we've never had before.
Last year.
We've had special.
We've had special
School
meetings.
districts?
The school districts.
In April.
In April.
We had one last year.
It was to borrow
So
money.
is there
Oh, yeah, because we, yeah, okay.
Or is there like
The problem,
is there a suggestion behind the comment?
just that if we could be consistent, it would be helpful, but, I understand the board has a lot of things to do, so I guess I'm not gonna push it very hard. Just
What would consistency
So, yeah,
look like?
We have the informational meeting on the night before the vote.
So are you proposing we have a meeting on the 20th?
21st.
21st? Sorry?
May 20th and 21st?
Instead of the one that we,
You know, when we have town meeting now, a lot of town meetings are occurring on a Saturday.
Right.
And then the vote doesn't happen until Tuesday. I don't
because
see
all
the
votes
problem
have
with
to be
this.
Tuesday.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess we can talk about it when we talk about the warning. Okay.
Again.
So, are there any questions from anyone in the room for Elizabeth regarding this?
That's final page, the
Regarding
action item.
the revised board resolution to assign the 2016-17 fund balances.
Okay.
Carol? They do.
I'm just asking for your patience, and since this is time that
I'm really confused about, I ran into Virgin's for the school board meeting. And your minutes say that you approved the regular meeting to be at the high school.
Wait, what?
Starting next year.
Oh,
Is that-
starting in August of 2018.
Okay. So can I just present a couple laws really quick to you?
Do they pertain to the?
Because I missed the public, well, actually, it does pertain to your meetings. This actually is a legal meeting, because regular meetings have to be in the same place, same time. So I have Secretary Condos, and I have his email, so.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the fund balance allocation?
No, I just was, because in the way that you have structured these meetings, if you're not here for public comment, you don't get to say anything. And I went to the high school because I misread your board meetings. But I also need to inform you, if you're going to wait that long, that you're actually in violation of regular open meeting laws.
And so I have,
Wait, how long for what?
Wait a week?
what's that?
Wait, how long for what? I'm not following you. We're gonna be in violation if we wait.
You said that meeting at the high school on a regular basis wasn't going to happen until August.
We
So
determined
from
that
now
at our
tonight to
annual meeting
August-
when we talked about the meeting schedule for the next school year, or for the next year.
Right.
Right.
So the meetings have been held on a rotating basis throughout the schools that are in our district and have been publicly warned for where they're going to be.
Right.
To our knowledge, that's not, given that they are publicly warned, that's not actually a violation
So
of
can
the
I
open
just
meeting
so
law.
I'm sorry, Carol, hold on. So we are talking about Elizabeth's report right now. I know that you want to make some public comment. Can we do that when we get to another break in the meeting, though?
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So are there any questions for, yes, Lori?
So it's not exactly about the fund report, but there is something about, that came up in the finances that I do need to ask Elizabeth about.
Okay.
But as far as the fund balances are concerned, I'm gonna make one last plug that, this is $124,650 that we could use to re-establish some of the cuts that the FCS and ACS have endured.
Wait,
And-
we
excuse me,
can't-
this is all about the fund balances, and we're talking about the,
I know, but we can't use that for this year on top of the budget that's
we
been
could put it in
approved.
with the 650.
But it won't increase our budget.
It's for 18-19. The 650 is for 18-19,
Right.
right? And if we take the 124 and add it to the 650,
It will not increase our budget. It will just reduce the revenue. We have a budget amount that's been approved by voters.
and that, wait, well, wait a minute. But this.
I'm sure
but-
Elizabeth could
wait, I'm
explain
so
it better than me.
confused. Okay, all right. So the 650 reduces the taxes.
Yep.
Okay, we have a budget. It doesn't include those cuts. I mean, it includes those cuts. And 650, anyway.
Along with the 650 at this point, you're not changing your expenditure
Right,
total.
you're
You're
just
only
reducing the
reducing your
tax.
taxes. That's
All right.
it.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
just going to leave it then.
Yep.
Thank you.
You have a question about the
How are
fund?
you going to stop this? How are you going to stop these growing deficits? Because if you didn't have this huge fund balance from 2017, the budget would be, it would be rough.
So none of these deficits have occurred in this year or last year, correct?
I believe in FY17, a few of them grew.
Okay.
She's got a good point. You know,
Yeah.
there is some that did not fully occur in FY17, definitely not in FY18, but they were mostly cumulative of a number of years and accumulated. I think the biggest problem is that in situations like this, maybe the board members weren't receiving monthly reports or quarterly reports that were showing those other funds. So at this point, this may be some of the first time that people are seeing some of these balances.
That is absolutely true.
And that we're going to try to make it so that we're reporting this at least on a quarterly basis or however often the board actually wants to see them. There's staff turnover, there's all kinds of reasons, maybe even auditing turnover amongst the different years of your fiscal years that accumulated some of these deficits over a long span of time. So I think close monitoring of those fund balances on a regular basis is what's going to cease them from becoming deficits.
So you're being very politic by saying maybe, but there is no maybe about it. All of those things actually did occur.
Yes.
And that's why
Except
there
for that I
was.
don't know for sure what caused them all.
You weren't
I
here.
wasn't here.
It wasn't you who did it.
Right.
I'm just saying that did happen. And so part of the only problem with the deficit is if you can't retire it. So the way to fix the deficit is to budget properly in the future. And we feel, I think the sentiment is we feel much better now about the position that our business affairs are in because of you and the work that you're doing, so that the budget line items will be set closer to proper predictions for how much things will occur, how much things will cost over the year. And then we won't develop deficits.
And the board is now on track to receive information to be able to monitor it.
And if you get to the end of a fiscal year and say you're in April and you run these balances reports and you see that there's a problem with your revenue not going to match your expenses, you can deal with it in that current fiscal year before it comes into an audit and actually has a deficit balance that you have to figure out what to do with in a subsequent year.
Rose?
This document is wonderful. It's very clear, and I'm really appreciate being able to.
I tried really hard.
Yeah, it's
I know,
really
it makes
clear.
sense.
It does. Hey, mathematically, it makes sense to me.
Good. Are there any further questions for Elizabeth? Does everybody understand this document? Okay, excellent. All right, I think that concludes the business manager report.
No, it doesn't. I know you guys are really loving this. Okay, we got a letter. We got an email from the treasurer talking about a credit card that he didn't like. I got an email from the treasurer saying that he had okayed a prepayment to a credit card that was with some students on a trip. But they needed the prepayment so that they could finish up their trip. Maybe you can tell the rest. The two things. One, we're making prepayments, that's bad. And two,
Can we just have a response before any rush to judgment about the process? Because I think Elizabeth will highlight some very important facts.
okay.
Thank you, Lori.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So, basically, after I received a copy of Greg's email, I wasn't actually privy to the conversation between our accounts payable person and Greg on the day that he was reviewing the bills. But I got all the information from both of them. So what I can see is that there was a trip that was being funded by student activities. Sometimes these trips are maybe a trip to Germany or a trip, outside of the country. So they require a prepayment of certain services. Maybe it's a hotel room, travel, whatever the case may be. The students fundraise or put money into the student activity account, and at some point, the teacher has to request money be funded either to them or to a company, say a hotel. In this particular case, this was a hotel charge. So it was charged to a business credit card for the hotel charge. The invoice for that was actually attached. Of course, the dollars were in German money. That was translated into what that would be in American money. And that is the amount that was paid using that receipt from the hotel. It was paid to the credit card company before the actual charge showed up on the statement. So attached to it, for instance, was a statement for the credit card that had only charges through February 7th. The actual charge for this hotel to be paid came on February 14th, 1 week later. This was an act of trying to make sure that that payment for a sizable amount of money went out to that credit card so that it didn't sit waiting for a receipt or whatnot. The following statement came. The charge was on there. Again, the backup was attached to the statement, but a little click mark was on that statement saying, we've already paid this charge on check number blah-blah-blah, backup attached. The only difference was that the translation of the dollars from German to American was slightly off. We actually underpaid by $25.45. And so we had to pay that additional $25. So in the end, when you look at both, invoices are what need to be paid, not necessarily by a statement. You also have to reconcile back to a statement. That activity actually did happen in this situation. It's just two separate pay periods of statements being reconciled. This was, I completely understand where the reservation comes if you're only looking at maybe one of those payments and not seeing the whole picture. I also understand from past experience, there was situations where credit card fraud happened in another district. Similar activity, the difference was that activity was being done without reconciliation to the credit card statement, which was not done in your case. So that's the difference. So it's a difference between paying from invoices and never reconciling to a statement versus paying from invoices and then reconciling them back to the statements, which was done in your situation.
Can we move on now from the business manager's report? All right, that brings us to the principal's reports. All right, I know there are some questions for, based on Stephanie's report. I'm just scrolling through to find it, sorry.
It's like 60,
I know,
57.
it's in here somewhere. Okay.
It's after the elementary reports, if I remember rightly.
It's 58.
Got it, okay. Okay, so we have, the position posting attached for the anticipated assistant principal. So I think one thing that Lori was alluding to earlier is that we have, this position I think has been referred to as assistant principal. It's also been referred to as dean of students. Well, I'm just giving a little background, I guess, right now. I certainly will. So, the job obviously has been posted as assistant principal, but there were some questions that were asked, that were answered in the minutes from last month that talked about a dean of students. So, Joanne, I think you answered those questions. Do you want to speak to that? What position are we hiring for here, and is there a job description?
I will start.
Thank you.
The assistant principal job description is more in line with what schools are calling a dean of students. So if I messed up people's perception of the different positions, I apologize. It is an assistant principal position, unless Stephanie is going to tell me something differently, but we have posted it as an assistant principal. What I tried to explain last month, and I don't think it was last month, I think it was the month before, when Stephanie was not there, this position is intended to work more closely with RRC around behavior violations. And so that is a typical responsibility of a dean of students. Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to jump in here and elaborate
Can
more.
I ask a question on what you just said?
Yeah.
Do we have a job, I haven't seen a job description.
So-
But you said that the job
Okay,
description.
so there's a little JD, job description in the posting. There is not a formal job description because we have not started the hiring process. We are in the process of formalizing that. Mr. Stetzel is currently applying for the director of school counseling and student programs. He has requested a leave of absence from his AP position. So we can't establish hiring committees for both until we know what is the outcome of the director of school counseling and student programs.
So he's
So
only
we-
interim.
He is,
Yes.
yeah, they're both open.
Both.
Both of these positions are open at the.
Correct.
Currently. So we have no committee established yet for the assistant principal hiring process? She's looking at you, so yes, I guess so.
I'd like to start a little bit further back, a little bit.
Okay.
The dean of students was never a title we used. We're looking for someone with administrative licensure to help support supervision and evaluation. Dean of students in a lot of places is perhaps a para, a non-contract employee, but something less than that. So that's one of the reasons why I believe the title fits the role. There's a broad array of responsibilities depending on which school you're in. So there's that. Dean of students, I think, was coined somewhere else.
Okay, I think there was just confusion that we were actually looking at two different positions. So there's just the one, correct?
Yes. Positions were both filled during the year, so it is our practice to fill them as interims, and then we repost during the the appropriate hiring season, which is now or a few weeks ago. Before contracts are usually a given in districts.
Right.
We are wrapping up, we're in the middle of the finalizing of the Director of School Counseling and Student Programming position. And as I explained in my board report, I thought I explained that I'm going to tried earlier not to use identities of people. I'm going to call them as positions, okay? Person currently serving in that role did request for leave of absence from their other role. So it is sort of like one has to be settled before we move on to the next one. The posting for the assistant principal position closes on Friday. I haven't looked recently. I don't know how many candidates there are. So we'll start that process when we finalize the other. It's posted as an anticipated assistant principal position right now because if we need to start a process, I want to have those candidates already have submitted their applications. There is a draft job description for that position, and actually, Joanna shared it with you today. For the assistant principal position, just draft responsibilities that we've been using in-house.
Not be shared, or would you feel uncomfortable sharing before you draft?
At our May meeting?
Pardon?
For our May meeting?
I mean, I don't have a job description, so there's, we're developing these as we go, as we need them,
Hey, we have a superintendent's job description, and that was the board's responsibility.
Good job,
Let's say
Sue.
that.
Good job, Sue.
we have a list of responsibilities that we use in the building, and it's public
Right.
knowledge because we share with the faculty, so they know who to go to for what. So there are responsibilities developed, but it is a, living document, and we move things around, like, who will do the e-news? There are those things, and I don't know to what detail do you want to go to?
All right, was that, did you have more?
There was a question earlier, there was language, there were responses to a set of questions that Diana had submitted to Joanne that I had responded to, that was included in the packet. I think that was the sort of out of context document. The responses were mine. Joanne may have added some to that, I don't really remember because it was a Google Doc, but the questions came from Diana, and they concerned a lot of this as well.
Yes. Are there more questions about this? Yeah, Christina.
So there's going to be a reduction in RC and so the assistant principal would assume those duties? Is that the intention?
Yes.
Okay.
To a certain degree, there was going to be an anticipated retirement, but and now we're looking at how to rearrange staff.
And so you don't feel the need to actually replace that person? It's going to.
Right.
Okay.
That was part of the rationale for this.
Resource Response Center.
They presented it.
RC, okay.
Are there any additional questions for Stephanie? Lori?
I just need some clarifying. So we have openings for an assistant principal. We have an opening for a director of school counseling and student programming. That's 2 positions. We also have a curriculum director position open. Is that correct?
That's at the district level.
It's actually a director of learning.
Director of learning. That's different than a curriculum director.
It is a change of job title.
But not another job.
A separate job.
No, it's the same position, slightly altered.
So there's one position at the superintendent level, which is the director of learning, used to be called curriculum developer or something. And there are 2 positions at the high school level. One is the assistant principal, and the other one is the director.
School counseling and student programming.
Okay. So
And
that's,
if I might add, it reflects what I believe very strongly is that the guidance model is obsolete given the transition we're making in schools to broaden the outlook of students, to incorporate personalized learning, to implement personalized learning plans, and to basically blow open the school and get students out into the community learning. We're charged with providing multiple pathways, flexible pathways, These are challenges that 5 years ago, school counseling offices did not have to accommodate. You know, they had a couple of early colleges, and that was about it. Now we're charged with making those available to every single student. So I felt this was an opportunity to change the model and reflect how powerful that office can be in supporting student needs. The question I might ask is, why wasn't there someone doing this work for the last 12 years since Virginia retired? That there was no one leading that charge. And you need someone who's licensed in that area to do it. So I took advantage of this opportunity, and Joanne and I put our heads together and decided this was the path we wanted to go.
So are you implying perhaps that filling this position may lead towards accomplishing that list of wonderful sounding things that you just
I hope so.
told us?
That's the goal.
Okay, well, that's quite a pitch.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it.
While we're on this, we have not been successful in finding a candidate for the Director of Learning.
I have not, but the screening committee is meeting again on Wednesday to interview another candidate.
But that's a different one that she was just talking about. The
Correct.
Director of
No,
Learning.
I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Stephanie?
I wasn't quite finished, but go ahead.
Do you have more questions for Stephanie?
Well, I was directed to speak to Stephanie about the positions when I went to talk about the positions earlier. So now I'm speaking about the positions, but this isn't specific to Stephanie. So should I wait till Stephanie's over and then ask them?
No, if you have more questions, please ask them now.
Okay, thank you. So I wondered if we have done any looking at being creative with some of these positions. Geez and crow, you know, we've got a new superintendent and we have a director of learning. We've been without a director of learning for 3 years now?
No,
Two.
just this last year.
Just this 1 year?
Yeah, 6
Who's the
months,
director of learning
actually.
last year?
I mean,
Kathy Barwick.
Kathy just left.
She was 80%. Okay, so we had an 80% for 2 years. We've had significantly less this year, and we've had some very significant student enrollment declines. I just wondered if we have done any, like what you were saying about the, you know, the director of school counseling and student programs we really need that position. Is there something we could do creatively that wouldn't require both the director of learning and a superintendent possibly? Could the director of school counseling help with some of the curriculum, blah, blah, blah? I just wondered if we've thought about doing something like that.
I would like to just interject on that point, and I know that the board has not received anything about curriculum in a long time, and I would like the board to receive information about curriculum, so I think having someone who is a director of learning or a curriculum coordinator would be a valuable asset to the district. That's just my,
Could I also add, Sue, that the list of grants that you see on this page is normally under the Director of Learning's responsibility, and as you know, you can see from this list, needing to have your arms around the contents of these grants and the purposes of the grants and organizing that is a huge undertaking. In fact, I hired someone just to do the consolidated federal grant from the time that Kathy left until the end of the school year. So it is, if we want to continue to bring in money and use that money effectively, we have to have the right people organizing it, writing the grants and managing the grants. And it's not just a business office function.
And so when does the curriculum get written? I'm so confused.
It's supposed to be an ongoing iterative process. We're actually working on proficiencies right now that is connected to our supposed curriculum. That will lead to a larger conversation. But that's the curriculum work we're doing this year.
Thank you.
Lori, do you have more about those positions?
What's that?
Did you have more questions? She said no, okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Stephanie? Or any of the other principals?
How's it going, guys?
That's not here, but I have a question actually for Travis and Beth, but you both of the schools had the state police come by to do a safety evaluation. Were there any suggestions for either of the schools from the police?
Yes, there
were.
were.
Okay.
They actually produced a checklist for each of the schools, and Ken has a copy of those checklists and trying to align it with what we've gotten from our safety audits. So yes, there are some minor things and also some areas that we have already have plans to address.
Okay,
New doors, for example.
right.
Yes.
Was that from them, actually? From the,
No, actually, that was, we knew we were going to get a buzzer system in this school. Unfortunately, we were, because of a lot of other things on Ken's plate, we just haven't gotten it done, and it will be done over the April vacation.
awesome.
So, yay.
That's cool.
doors are opening, others shall remain closed.
And the Virgin schools were not inspected by the police, or were they?
Matt?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll speak for us. We were supported by the Virginia Police because that's covers us. So same process, just a different force based on location.
Same checklist, or?
I assume it's the same. I only saw ours. It's the state, I believe it's the one that
The state created a checklist and distributed that.
Has got all those.
Started this process last summer.
Yes.
Actually, he started it very proactively.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing to my report, only because of the timing? I hope you got a chance to see our 7 through 12 choral performance last week.
I did.
It was wonderful. And when she brought up the middle school and the high school to do the final performance piece, it was just beautiful to see those kids up there. You know, that represented about, I don't know, like half our student body
Yeah,
in chorus.
yeah.
It was just wonderful. So
It sounded great.
If you have an opportunity to go to a choral performance next year, please take advantage of it. Unfortunately, I missed the band performance because I had an issue with my mother. But yeah, they chose to split it up, band one night, chorus another night, and the auditorium was packed. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, they were good. And the elementary school concerts were great. Virgin's, I assume the other
So
schools.
she's our new hire. That's the other point. You know, we hired her this year. We've had 4 choral directors in 4 years. So
Right.
it's working out very
And I've
nicely.
seen, I know the chorus was shrank, and now it's coming back.
And she
in
did a
size.
piece with just the guys.
Yep.
That was
Like
great.
20 of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
She's a rock star.
Yeah, it was nice. It was very nice. Thank you. Okay, yes.
Just backtracking to, and tell Sue and Caitlin, congratulations, they're just really doing an awesome job, all the choral teachers. But
Yeah.
the safety thing, is that something we want to share with the public? And, you know, about this is what we were told, this is what we're doing, or is it premature? Just the checklist you guys went
No,
through.
this is not something I want to share with the public. This is an internal document.
But we are going to be having the forum to
And
share.
and some of that in a
what will
broad
be
stroke
shared.
will be, I mean, obviously, when you have a buzzer system, the public's
Yeah.
going to know pretty quickly, right?
Well, I mean, we want to assure them that we're doing, you know,
Yeah.
we're looking at things, this is what we're doing, you know.
You can imagine that with whatever level of detail this checklist goes into, that highlighting publicly security flaws in our schools is probably not a very good idea.
Not so much the flaws, but what, you know, what
But
we're
we are
actually
taking
doing
steps.
something, yeah. Obviously, we don't want to do that.
Neither confirming nor denying that such flaws exist, but that we're committed to fixing them if they do.
Okay, so if there's nothing else on the principal's reports, I will turn it over to the student report.
All right.
Just half a second. I'd like to compliment
Sorry,
Travis on the storage system that you have for the athletic balls.
All right, come on, let's stay on track here, people.
We have some student report. It's serious.
Mason, please.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. So far, the month of April has been fairly decent, in my opinion. Not much to really say about that. But in terms of academics, the SAT boot camp is now offered at VUHS for students wanting to improve upon their SAT scores or just do really well the first time, which I think is a great opportunity for students at VUHS. I don't think something like this has really been offered in VUHS before, which is really great to see that implemented. The 29th of March was a half day, and the 30th was an in-service day for teachers and staff. The 17th of April is also going to be a half day. Skipping forward and skipping around, the German students are anticipating a trip to Germany next week, which is always a great thing to see every single year, that kind of this cultural exchange with people of different cultures. AP testing is going to begin very, very soon, as in next month. So all AP students are getting readily prepared for that. Something that's really interesting is on next Friday, the 20th, 4/20, VUHS is going to be holding a safety and wellness day. So the whole day is going to be dedicated to different stations where students will go around participating in different stations, identifying different ways that they can live a healthy and kind of interactive lifestyle in kind of a healthy manner, which is really great to see. Skipping around again, NHS went to the local Bixby library and helped catalog artifacts on the 29th of March. In terms of sports, March Madness was going on. Lots of people interested in that. Spring sports are now beginning: track, baseball, softball. As Principal Taylor pointed out, there was a choral concert held on Thursday the 5th, the VUHS auditorium. Lots of great community feedback in terms of that. Just another outstanding performance by the VUHS music. In terms of seniors, we have a lot of stuff going on. So the agenda for project graduation has been finalized by the project grad committee. And when I say finalize, I mean we have the plan set out, but nothing is booked yet. So we still have to book that. But we have a decent amount of money. As of right now, we have $8,000 in the senior kind of fund. We held a bingo night, which went extraordinarily well for the seniors. Just under $1,000 was raised, $843, which is fantastic for the senior class. Tomorrow is the deadline for the local scholarships, so students have been really kind of putting their heads to the wall and kind of working to finish those. In terms of extra things, class of 2019 selling scarves for junior prom, held later this year in May. Basin Harbor visited VUHS to hold interviews for students interested in summer jobs. And 2018 delegates to Girls State have been selected. I do not have the names with me, but I'm sure they're wonderful candidates.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, I
yes,
think I saw them.
Is it all right if I?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mason.
you. Yep.
I think the parent group was leading that charge, right? Stephanie? Yeah?
Please.
Somebody that knows. It was something that parent group was trying to help with. We need a minimum of, I think, 15 for it to happen, and I would say not even 10 expressed interest. So we have.
Oh, so it's not happening.
It is not happening.
Oh.
But we had a great conversation at the parent group about it after that, and realized just what Mason said. It really isn't something that has been offered, at least that we know of, and it's something that we would like to help with again, whether it looks like a half a day where this woman came. There's other options that we also will definitely talk to Stephanie about, and hopefully offer earlier in the fall next year, so that students can.
Could you potentially reach out to other districts as well?
Yeah, I think yes, if we had more time, we could have reached out and tried to fill the spot, yes, absolutely, but it just came tight. Time tight.
Right. Okay. All right, before we move, sorry, George.
Just one thing to add. It's my understanding that the Virgin's math team came in 5th overall for the season.
Nice.
In the math meet season.
It's like a state.
There's a math team from Virgin's that travels to other schools, and there's basically math meets, math contests. And you earn points. Someone else can probably explain this better than I can, but essentially.
curious why you're saying fifth, because I'm pushing for third. Oh.
Anyway.
Well,
They were fifth, they were fifth
They
tonight.
have 5 meets over the year, and they're at their 5th one right now because they had some snow days. And,
The unofficial report from my son, which is why I left
oh,
for a
he
little
was,
was fifth, but
maybe
the press.
today they came in
They were,
fifth.
they were
Oh,
in
they're
fifth
They've
today.
come in
Today.
third a few times.
Okay.
So, so I'm thinking we're maybe better for the year than fifth. But anyway,
that could
they've
be.
done a great job. They've done better than we usually do. Again, it's one of the biggest teams in the league.
Yeah.
Because we don't turn anyone away.
Because
And,
math is cool at Virgins.
Yes, math is cool at Virgins.
They have very cool t-shirts every year.
Yes,
They get cool t-shirts.
And my secondhand, perhaps imperfect information also had Kai Williams as number 1.
That's a surprise.
I'm not surprised.
Not a surprise. Cool.
Well, for the whole meet, not just
For
for.
the
Put
league.
results in my
Yes.
board report, because I take pride in doing that, and I also take pride in listing all the schools that they beat out. There is some satisfaction there because they regularly beat the school in which I once worked.
Oh, my, okay. All right, we are incredibly behind time here. Shocking. But before we move on to the board reports, Carol, I'd like to give you a few minutes to talk since you missed the public comment.
I'll just do 2. So, open meeting question to Jim Condos, and I'll just read it briefly to you. He says there's 3 types of meetings: regular, special, emergency. Regular meetings, adoption, adopt a resolution setting the regular day, time, and place, post it. Special meetings, 24-hour notice. Emergency, emergency. So he gives the statute, and then his comment at the end is, so to answer your question, if open meeting laws require town and school boards to conduct their regular monthly meetings in the same location, or can they meet in various locations? And his response is, yes, a town or school board can hold a meeting in different locations, different days and different times. However, a regular meeting must be in the same location, time, and day as the original resolution stated. If any one of these 3 criteria, location, time, or day, changes, then it must be warned as a special meeting. So that's the first one. And then,
So we do adopt the resolution of our date and time and location at our annual meeting each year for the school.
right, so if you chose Virgins, you should be at Virgins tonight.
We chose Virgins beginning in August 2018. Last year, we chose
Well, right,
the
but
rotating.
this is law. So what I'm saying is, and I'll include y'all with condos, but what I'm saying is that if you wait until August, you're having illegal meetings.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I don't want, I mean, I'll accept your comment. But my explanation is that we make that resolution at our annual meeting, which goes through the entire year. And then at the next annual meeting, we start it again, starting in August for the following year.
How I would interpret what you just read is that if you set different places within your resolution, you can follow that.
Right.
Well, I just didn't want to take the time.
Right,
The
but
the law is here, so I'll just.
I have it in front of me
I'll hand
too. I
to
pulled
you.
it up because I knew it was coming.
Okay, good.
All right, did you have a second?
So the second one is executive sessions. And there's very specific. A public body may not hold an executive session except to consider one or more of the following. And then it just gives you the whole list. And I noticed that history within school boards is personnel matter is always listed, but it's not listed in the law. So, so anyway, I'll give both of these to you. And I will contest the one with Jim Condos. The regular meeting places. I think it's really important with regular meetings that people know
where they are, what time, the same. And I'm 100% that is the way regular meetings are to be, you know, the location, the time has to be regular.
So you're concerned that we rotate our meetings amongst the schools? Is that what you're saying?
Right, my concern is that you're not conducting a legal meeting, and also that
because
people
we're
don't
moving?
know where you're at for the regular meetings. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to board reports. Oh. So I had a few things that I put out. I had put out a timeline for the screening process for the superintendent search, gun violence prevention resolution, or signing a national call for action. I put out all the committee charges so that we make sure we're all on the same page with those, the April retreat, and I also put out a document that the Superintendent Evaluation Committee put together regarding the year-long process for superintendent evaluations as we move forward. So, does anyone have any questions on any of those documents that I sent out? Okay. Do we want to talk about the superintendent screening now, or do we want to do that?
Well, we
have
should
that
just do it in
committee.
order.
Yeah, we have
So
that committee,
we'll-
okay. All right, so I did put out this gun violence resolution. I actually put that out last month, and the resolution that has been adopted by some other boards was actually in support of legislation, which has already now made its way through the legislature. So we're a little behind the 8 ball on that, but it did go through. But I was just curious of what everyone on this board's thoughts were in terms of if people felt like our board should sign on to any sort of call of action or take, write a letter or be in support of something in regards to this. Yes.
Should we discuss that now or under the discussion items after we're done?
Well, it was part of my report, so I thought we could converse about it now. But, I mean, we can do it.
We don't have to do it
We don't have to do it at all.
No, I just mean, we don't do it twice, we just do it
We
now.
don't do it twice. Right. Thoughts? Anyone? No one? And we don't need to do anything.
To your question,
Mhm.
I would say I'm interested in being a part of a conversation in which we write a resolution and we bring it to a vote and we approve it or we don't. So I'd like to, I'll answer your question and then say, let's figure out what we can do when we have this discussion item down below.
Okay.
And write a phrase, we approve of this, or we don't.
Okay.
But in here, you asked a question, and I'll respond, say yes.
All right, well, that's one.
I'll second that, yes. I think I originally sent that resolution to you or somebody when it first came out of the paper, but,
Both satisfactory for different management, but they're both well structured.
Right.
So it kind of just depends on what direction we want to try to take it, but I think they're both.
Right.
I think that we should approach this from a different angle.
Okay.
I think that the base problem is mental health, and I believe that we should, if we're going to do something, we should support a resolution to increase mental health services.
Okay.
To go?
I think that making a resolution that mentions, I think a couple of things. I think it's, personally, I feel like it's a combination of both of those things, both gun legislation and gun culture in the United States, as well as lack of mental health services. But given that the legislation has already moved through, as you said, it's a little bit less important for us to posture our support for something that's already occurred, and a little bit more important, like you said, George, I think, in my opinion, to continue moving the conversation forward, instead of just saying like, oh yeah, of course, I supported that too, I just didn't get around to it. So not to discount the importance of confronting the role that guns play in our society. Also thinking even further than that when we make a resolution, I would like to see that as well.
All right, so we can discuss further during our discussion item, I guess. Unless does anybody have anything else on anything that I had sent out?
Just one thing that should go in the record. You and I, we both attended the Virgin's, I'm sorry, I had it here, the VRED.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
Yep.
worth mentioning and being in the minutes. The Virgins for Responsible Educated Decisions, and I think we watched 13 or 14 middle school students report on research that they had done about the youth risk behavior survey, and they made practical suggestions for how the school is working on these issues, and showed great student leadership. How about that?
They were great. Those kids were phenomenal, yeah.
Last year's was really good. I was really disappointed I missed it this year.
They put on a skit this year.
That was on March 15th.
Yeah.
And was suicide one of the things they focused on
Well,
again
they
this year?
actually were analyzing the same data, it turns out, as they did last year because, you know, testing results aren't always reliably reported back to the district, so.
Yes.
So it was a different group of students, but they analyzed the same data because the next year's data wasn't available.
Oh,
Did they come to a different conclusion?
I think they actually did focus on slightly different outcomes, yeah. It was, you know, they looked at all the data, and then the student group decided which outcomes to focus on. So it was different students, so I think they identified different areas, yeah.
so are we no longer participating in that survey? Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
It's only given at the end of the year.
Right, but I still think it was not the current, isn't that what you told me?
So it's
Stephanie?
2015. 2017.
I mean,
It's
it's,
the last time we gave it was 2017, and we don't have the data yet.
Right.
And we did it in the spring of 2017. So
Okay.
it's almost a year since we.
so next year's group will hopefully have different data.
Yes, spring.
Awesome, okay. Anything else from what I had sent out there? We good with that? All right, Christina? Anything from Hannaford? Oh, there you are. Sorry.
The last board meeting last month got canceled because of the nor'easter.
Oh.
The next meeting is this Wednesday, and I will be attending. And then I think I sent all of you a survey out from Dana Peterson from, yeah. So if you get a chance to do the survey, they'd appreciate it.
Wait, you sent two things. You sent out a link to their updated website.
Yes, I did send that,
Yep.
yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you just today sent out a link to survey, and that survey was on, what was the topic on that survey?
It's about basically tech centers, that Department of Education is trying to assess how tech centers are, you know, perceived by lots of different people. And so I took the survey today, and it takes a little bit of a chunk of time, just
Okay.
FYI, but I think it's going to be useful if everybody can
Right.
give their 2 cents.
And we can share that out? Is that for public distribution, or are they just
I think you
looking?
can. I think
Okay.
they're looking for anybody to take
Okay.
it. So parents, students, board members, community members.
Cool. Great, thank you.
Yep.
Lori, anything to report from the VSBA?
We had I think it might have been the same night, we had a phone meeting, and one of the things that I thought was very interesting, the previous meeting, one of the people that was supporting this House Bill 911, which is an unfortunate name, but it was to move some of the school funding out of the property tax into income tax. And one of the things he said during that meeting was it's very likely that Governor Scott will not sign it without some give. And one of the things they were thinking they were going to have to give during the process was a statewide health insurance contract for the teachers. Now, that didn't make it into the final bill, which I thought was very interesting, but one of the things they sent to us for this next meeting is an article that Vermont Digger did on this particular topic. And during this conversation, Nicole May said that she had met with the union, the chair of the union, of the teachers union, the state teachers union, and what she was hoping was that they were going to have a conversation about the health insurance, and what they ended up having was a clear the air match, which I thought was very interesting. They did not get to the health insurance.
Hey, what?
That's all she said. I thought that was a very interesting statement. Yeah, exactly. So, we've got a meeting coming this Wednesday. And I did ask them about whether you guys asked me in the parking lot, whether the VSBA was doing anything or had plans to do anything about giving us some guidance on what to do with declining student population. And the chair, the chair of the board was like, no. But if anybody else has any ideas, they can share them with you.
Good luck with that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, I mean, I'll bring it up again, but I was, I mean, how many years have we been dealing with this and the VSBA hasn't even discussed it?
Said anything.
It seems a little weird. But
Right. Well,
we're all
I'm sure
behind
they have a
the
lot on
eight
their
ball
plates.
at some point, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Community Engagement Committee, any update?
So, I guess I have 2 months worth of stuff. We did a survey, a district-wide survey, on town meeting day and at parent conferences, and it was also in the school newsletters, basically asking people how they wanted us to engage them. So, would you be most likely to participate in surveys, get information on Facebook?
Love that.
You know.
Sorry.
We had 200 responses, which I thought was pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks to Tom and Chris, who forced the surveys in people's hands at town meeting. I did not do so well, and Lori too, yes. So Beth has those results, and I can't give you the results tonight. Unfortunately, I think the largest category was not face-to-face, and we were hoping for some face-to-face things. We've reorganized. I'm chair again. Finn is clerk again, even though I wasn't there. No? You're not doing it?
Oh, you were elected in absentia.
That's not going to come up till later, but that's an error in the minutes. I did not volunteer to be reinstated.
You weren't there?
Yes, I was.
No,
All
you
right,
weren't.
this sounds like a committee discussion. You guys can have that at your next meeting.
I'm not on the committee is what I'm saying, at all.
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
We'll cover that later. under
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Okay. We discussed the charge that was approved at the last meeting, and the committee would like to include language from the policy, the actual policy language in the charge. We'll address that next week. We had, Joanne and Sue and I had a phone conversation with Sue McCormick, who is going to be looking at our strategic plan again to give us some more ideas. That will happen before our next meeting, so hopefully I can, in May's meeting, give you a completed strategic plan for approval. And we created a diagram to kind of show how Community Engagement Committee interacts with the board and with the community. And that, Sue is reviewing that as well.
Sue McCormick.
Sue McCormick, yes, sorry. Our Megan Tart, who is one of our student members, is taking all of the assets and trying to put them into a program. So all those community assets that we, at one of our workshops, came up with for each of the towns and for the school district will be on actual asset maps that people can access. And we're going to need another student for next year because Megan's graduating. And that's anything. Oh, and 3 of us are going to a conference on Saturday that the VSBA is sponsoring, and there will be, I'm trying to think that, well, anyway, on Saturday, Christina and I and Judy Elson are going to that, and we are going to be applying for a Nellie Mae grant.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Facilities?
I'd like to point out that we passed our bond vote and it was not challenged, and so we're moving ahead with the bond and the performance contract, which is very exciting. We are in the midst, and by we I mean Ken and Elizabeth and Joanne are in the midst of managing and beginning the process of managing it. And so that requires figuring out commissioning agents and clerk of works, and I think we should feel thankful that Ken is as on top of things as he is, because he seems to be doing a bang-up job. One thing that I wanted to try to share with you at the last meeting, but we ran out of time, is that the solar project as a whole cannot be as large as was originally envisioned, because the one set of roofs can handle it and another set of roofs cannot. And it's also unclear, because we haven't started the permitting process with Green Mountain Power, or we're just starting that process. It's unclear what they will allow to happen. So at this point, the solar part has been pulled out of the contract that was signed. At least this is the way I understand it. The solar part was pulled out of the contract that will be signed, not to be gotten rid of, but to so that we can move forward with the HVAC system. And the solar part of the system is the solar part of the project. We're still working on the scale that we can have and to put forward to GMP to get permitting for.
So there's a timing issue because permitting
There's
takes.
Well, it's not just that I think
That's why it was pulled out.
it was pulled out because it's unclear. More work needs to be done to determine the scale and then the permitting. And we really need to move forward with the HVAC system because that needs to be done before school starts. And the solar can be done further into the fall.
Right.
And-
It can stand alone, essentially.
Okay.
So we don't want the uncertainty with the solar at the moment to delay the other important things.
Got it.
But you're gonna borrow two separate amounts to do both components of the project then?
Yes, so the process, I'm not. We
Elizabeth
are.
is. You signed that thing, you signed it.
Yes, so I mean, we pulled it out, we're moving forward as if they're two related but separate projects.
Okay. George?
That is the
Well-
current.
That's the intent, yeah.
That's the intent. There are a few different issues. One, as Tom mentioned, we're gonna have to scale the size of the array back because of structural issues with some of the roofs. Not to say that they are unsafe, but just that you can't add a whole bunch more weight of solar panels onto some of the roofs, like the auditorium, which is one. So the real estate has shrunk to a certain extent. Now, the other thing we're thinking about is, and there's also just getting a permit to interconnect from Green Mountain Power may be an issue because there's already a lot of solar on the local circuits, including a 1 megawatt solar array right next to the school. So one of the things that we are looking at and considering is adding a battery bank as part of the solar project, which would not necessarily create energy like a solar panel does, but it could shave peak demand off the school's electrical energy use profile, essentially, which could have a money-saving impact on the school and be more attractive to Green Mountain Power as a combined solar and storage package, so.
We are, that's glad that we got that very quick soundbite plug. The next 10 or 15-year plan, electric buses, that because they only run periodically and run great showrooms, could be used as battery banks and remain plugged in and drain that during the peak load. So that's all I had to say.
Anything else from finance? Or,
Just
I mean,
something that-
facility?
yeah.
Sorry.
It just occurred to me, so the guaranteed savings of the 200,000 a year is roughly in the contract, the energy savings, is that including the solar?
Yes, it is, but part of the thing is that as this, and this is, the numbers are going to have to get fiddled with, but as the scale of the solar goes down, we borrow less money, so we have less to pay back, and theoretically, we have less to pay back, we have less savings, it hopefully, yes, it hopefully shrinks together.
It should balance.
Right, but is that particular figure in the contract?
The guaranteed savings.
The guarantee, yes.
The guarantee is
It's on our-
made
it's in our
if
budget.
everything goes as
It's in the
written.
budget. It's not in the contract.
Not in
But-
the contract.
But it's what we use to make.
It's not in the contract.
Yeah.
The budget is not in the contract. The energy savings is in the budget.
The
Energy savings isn't in the
savings
contract?
is in the contract.
The guarantee from EEI is based upon the whole project
Right.
being done the way it was proposed. If the project is scaled back, then the savings will be scaled back.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we anticipate that because of the scale back, we'll borrow less money, so we won't have as big a payment to make. So it still should balance out that the net bottom line should be the same.
I mean, it was in the proposal, I was just wondering if it's in the contract.
Right.
Exactly, so that's why it's.
So we will be kept updated on all of this, I'm sure.
Yes.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right, Finance Committee.
So we have a scheduled meeting for 4/26, which I don't know if it's been warned, Gloria, I'm sorry I didn't make your deadline.
No, it hasn't been warned yet.
But you will, okay, and you'll put it on the, anyway, and bills were reviewed by Chris this week? Yeah.
Cool. Policy.
Okay, so we're on track to finish the things that we said that we would do. Next, we're going to have to meet before next month, okay? I'm sorry. We have some more policies to review, and that'll be our last shot at it, I guess, this time, until we get into the I don't really know what we are doing here. We've made, I'll ask that later. So we reviewed the policies that require procedures, okay? And there are 33 that require procedures. And so in this last review, Joanne and I talked, and Glory sent a bunch of policies to me. And right now, and then I reviewed these and I sent this on to the rest of the policy committee. So right now, I think that 22 of the 33 have been created. 8 are in process, and we have a date for those that'll be done either in May or June. And 3 just need a few pieces of language cleaned up, like they say ANWSD. Okay, so last time I reported out on this, we had like 11 procedures created, so we've doubled. We have 16 required reports, one of which was reported tonight. 6 were created, now 7 were created and reported out. And then 8, 2 are partially, and we talked about one. Joanne mentioned the D20 report about curriculum. That's a tricky one. I mean, it's likely all that's going to be reported on curriculum is what was in the annual report and what we've received a few times. But that report should become more systematic. The policy asks for a full report on all curriculum. I mean, we're going to need better than that going forward. So 8 are in process and to date. And we have a date for when they'll happen. So that's it.
Thank you, that's progress. We are moving in the right direction. Good.
The question is about, my question is about, what is our work year now, right? We did a work year last time that started in July.
Right.
Right, and it went to June.
Right.
And
So we have a plan, right.
we need to revise. We're in a new
Yeah.
year, and the new plan is going forward.
No,
And
but
that's
our-
the way
but
it's
our-
always going to be. A new plan will happen after the March meeting.
Oh,
And
you're gonna
that's when we
start it
start
in
to
March?
build, right? Because
Well,
we're still doing things we promised last year.
Yeah, we
As-
typically have our goal setting in the summer retreat
Okay.
for the board and
So,
like,
so,
you
okay,
know,
so
the
we're on track.
committees.
We're going to review those things again. Okay.
At their summer retreat, yes.
Okay.
So that's okay, you can still work on that until
Sounds
June.
good. Yeah, it would just be tough if like somebody got voted
Right.
off, right?
I know, it's kind of odd because when the elections happen and then when the reorganization happens isn't really, and that's what we ran into when we did the superintendent evaluation
right.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Because really, we operate a school district which functions from September
Right.
to June, you
Yeah.
know? But yet, we've got this interruption
the
in
fiscal year.
March. And the fiscal year as well, yeah.
We've got 3 different years.
So.
And the election year, right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Right, okay. Superintendent Screening Committee.
So we met on April 3rd, and Bob Stevens took us through the process, and we established the rest of the dates for the committee's work. We should the committee has 5 meetings, and Sue, hopefully you read the thing that Sue has submitted, because it laid out exactly what we're doing and who was there. 5 meetings. The last one will be on the 16th of May, and that's when the candidates will visit us and visit the schools, and they'll talk with the screening committee, as well as the members of the public, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Teachers, students, staff. Then the committee will forward a name or names to the board to interview. And we were hoping to have that happen on May 21st, which is the 3rd Monday of the month.
So I think the last time that this board discussed, we actually were shooting for May 14th. So
And
if
we
you wanna-
could not do
Right,
that.
so
So we could not do that, so we are hoping to
the
have.
committee could not
The
make
committee
that happen.
couldn't make that happen. You can
Right.
blame us. We worked very hard. That was actually one of the hardest, finding dates
Sure
that
you were there a
that
while.
13 people or 11 people could all fit was very difficult. So we're not gonna be able to do the May 14th as a time to meet. So we were hoping that the board would be willing to meet on May 21st to interview candidates.
And I think that there are always potential for scheduling conflicts, especially this late in the year. And
There-
so
there always-
the
yes.
board may need to be flexible about that date. So I think that what I have heard from Bob is that we're not actually in a position to nail that date down right now.
Yeah.
Because the candidates might not be available on that date. We don't know who they are yet.
Right,
There are candidates.
right. Because of a lot, yeah, because of a lot of
We're gonna be in
different
Maine
factors.
eating lobster.
So how many candidates would we expect to review?
Maximum 3.
Yeah, 1 to 3.
1 to 3?
So I guess the goal would, or the hope is that folks can be somewhat flexible in reserving a date in May once the committee gets a little bit further into their work and has more of an idea of when that date might be.
Yeah, 24th would be better.
So I forwarded to the board the criteria, the form that Bob has asked us to fill out, and I would encourage everybody to fill that out and send that to him by the end of this week. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you need me to send it to you again, I'm happy to do that. The other thing that I think is worth noting is that we are asking in the action items for the board to approve a budget of up to $2,500 for this search, and that would include things like food for the days that we are interviewing people all day, It might include travel expenses if someone's coming from out of town. And
The room, maybe.
the room, we will need to use, we can't, we're using the central office right now, but on the day that we're interviewing the candidates who are visiting, it was noted that we probably don't want to be in the central office. So.
Because it's not confidential.
Because it's not confidential and it's kind of weird.
So.
No, just to have, you know.
It's weird.
Right.
It's okay though.
So we thought that 2,500, we don't know that, we can't fill out a budget yet, but we thought that 2,500 would be sufficient to
Get you off the ground in a way.
get us off the ground. And hopefully we'll spend, 400 of it on food and people will be driving down from nearby, but we don't know. We know we have, it's open, it's up. We don't know how many candidates that we have, and we won't know for 2 weeks, I think. But we know there are people who've submitted applications. Yes?
Can I give a one paragraph plug for why we need that money?
Yep.
So just, and maybe you already understand this, but the reason that we don't, well, he just said the reason we don't know the exact number. The reason that it's important is that we may receive, that have already received candidates who are coming from pretty far away. And in order to have them come travel here on spec for an interview is not fair to ask them to do that, and it's not equitable if we want to be able to really widen our search net. So, but understand that we're not just bringing everybody who applies, just handing out travel vouchers. This is, the narrowing down process happens first, and only if there's a very strong candidate who we want to bring here for that final process are we going to be requesting those funds to help them get here, so that they will come, instead of just saying, no, I'm not going to go pay $500 to go and maybe get a job. That's the rationale.
Yep. There is one other issue, which is that we need to determine as a board whether or not we're going, when we interview the candidates, whether or not we're going to do it in public or in executive session. These interviews often, well, what did you do last time?
I was on
Oh,
the
you were on the
screening
screening
committee.
committee, you were not on the
I was
board.
not on the SU board, yeah. Lori would have been here. You were on the board, though, at the time
No.
that Joanne was hired?
She wasn't here with
It was right, it was the year before.
I thought, no? Oh,
Yeah, I was on the issue board, but I don't remember when,
well, Bob said that only, I think in his recollection, and he's done that, 30 times or something, that only one time did a board opt to do it in
Public
open.
session, an open session.
Yeah, I mean, I
but
believe we were
that's-
in executive session. We
Right.
were in a closed room in the high school.
And I have all of the reasons listed here for going into executive session. But you can go into executive session for reasons around contracts and labor relations agreements with
Yep.
employees. So those would be the reasons for doing that. But
Do you all feel like we should, executive session is fine?
are we, is that consensus on that?
Understood that of course, the public gets to meet these people and ask them questions. It's just that we get an interview in executive session in addition to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every interested party will have opportunity to meet, ask questions, provide input to the board. The board would interview and discuss in executive, if that's what the board wishes. The decision would be made in public.
In public.
Yeah.
And that same criteria sheet that is going out to you is going out to members of the community who will also then send it to Bob, who's going, and those are what we're going to use to develop the questions that we're going to ask the candidates.
How is that sheet getting sent to the community? I'm just curious.
There are members of the community that are on the committee. There are 3 members of the committee, and so they are hopefully sending it out. There are teachers that are on there, and they have sent it out who happen to be in the room, and they have sent it out, I presume, to their constituencies. So the goal is to have the people who are representing a particular constituency be responsible for getting it out to those folks.
I can speak that it did come to the parent group at the elementary school, so, and I don't believe any of our community members are on that parent group, so it's getting out there.
Do you guys have any more questions for the screening committee?
Was that,
issues?
did people think that it's wise to do those in executive then?
Well,
Or
just
not?
number 3, the reason is you can have an executive session for the appointment or employment or evaluation
Yes.
of a public officer or employee, provided that you then do the actual hiring in public and explain your reasoning. But you can
Right.
interview, and it's absolutely one of the reasons you can do it.
Yes.
So yes, it makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we want to make sure that. Yep. Right,
And there was more than one candidate too that came.
I believe so. Okay. Good, good?
Good?
Okay. Alrighty, so, you know what, and maybe I should throw in one point here as well. When we decided to move ahead with this route for the superintendent hiring, we also talked about opening up conversation with some neighboring districts to see how we could share resources, and I have reached out to begin those conversations.
When you say share resources, you mean up to potentially including sharing the superintendent, right?
Have, start of discussions to see what might be available as options, yes,
That's what I would too.
yes. So,
Action.
action items, okay. Looking for a motion for the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any, yes, Ben?
Minor point, and I'm sorry for not contacting you directly about this because I didn't. But I didn't actually volunteer to be on it says in the minutes that I'm on the Community Engagement Committee, but I'm on 2 other committees, and I can't do all 3. So if we find a superintendent, I would be happy to humbly request reinstatement, but at this point, I can't be on all 3. And I shouldn't be marked down as on Community Engagement Committee in the minutes, because I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, so you didn't volunteer, so
I
it
did
is,
not volunteer.
it's an edit to the minutes, okay.
Someone else said my name, it was assumed.
All right, any other changes to the minutes, George?
Yep. Under established date, time, and location of meetings, at the end of the second paragraph, there was an amendment that was voted and the amendment passed. It is not noted in these minutes that we then voted on the primary motion and that passed. But I've talked with Gloria about that. She reviewed the recording from RETN and found that in fact was the case. So that needs to be corrected.
Thank you. Excellent. Anything else regarding the minutes? All right, all in favor of accepting the minutes with those 2 changes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay. Approval of bills and director's orders?
All right, so I have here the check authorizations for $1,090,753.94. And then I have payroll for, it's a lot of paper.
Yes.
For $1,329,621.35.
And you are making a motion to approve that?
And I'm making a motion that we accept these. I reviewed a random sampling and found no issues to bring forward.
Second.
All right, any questions? Okay, all in favor of approving those amounts, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, we're going to skip C for now. D, authorize expenditure of up to $2,500 for incidental expenses related to the superintendent search.
So moved.
Okay. Tom explained why. Any other questions about that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Authorize expenditure of up to $1,200 for Staff Appreciation Week.
Second.
Okay. This was moved by Christina and seconded by John. And this money is currently in the budget, correct?
It's not currently in the budget, it's in the next year's budget.
Ah, this is not in the budget.
I thought we approved in this budget.
We talked about it, but it came up as an issue to make sure that it's in another budget going forward. But Elizabeth and I feel that the board can manage this
Out of the general fund?
out of the general fund.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? So I was and Glory has generously offered that she would coordinate this on our behalf.
Thank you, Larry.
But, essentially, we're looking at doing some lunch and desserts or breakfast or whatever works out with the schedules at each school during that week, where it won't conflict with all of the other groups that are also doing things for our wonderful staff and teachers. So, any other questions or, okay. All in favor of allocating that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Verification of receipt of the fiscal year 17 audits. Do we have a motion? We are just verifying that we received the audits.
I move that we verify that we received the audits of fiscal year 17.
Second.
Elizabeth, we need to verify that we received the audits, is that what we're?
I'm not sure we really need to verify it.
I've never seen it on the agenda before.
Well, I didn't put it on there.
Where did it come from?
I didn't put it on there either.
It's been on past agendas.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't recall that.
I don't hear a verification, though.
Right.
They're all
It's
online.
electronic, they're all
Seen it.
They're
online.
all online.
Can we verify that they have been received?
They're all online,
They're
and
online.
Elizabeth has offered hard copies to anyone who asked.
So that's yes.
If you'd read.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Everybody who's received an agenda, or received the audits and verifies receipt of them, please say aye. Aye.
Wait, that wasn't my motion.
What was the motion?
That it be verified. It has
Okay.
been verified. I haven't received it, but I'm not going to
You
vote.
have an email.
I haven't read it.
Well, that's
We can understand that.
I'm not, this is not the motion.
Okay.
This is, you're being
I'm
hostile.
sorry, I misspoke the motion.
Okay.
anyways.
Is anyone opposed to that or abstaining?
I guess.
Okay, G, approval of the warning for the informational meeting. Okay, so we have two versions
now
of
we got a
this,
problem.
but, so we need a motion.
I move
Just say that Addison's misspelled.
Yes.
Okay, let's have a motion first, but thank
I
you.
move that we approve should I be specific, or should I just say one of them? Do I have to make a motion that one or the other? One or the other? I move that we approve the one that I liked more when you talked about it first. Well, I forget what.
So the only,
Is it the one that included the commingled?
so there are two versions here. One includes an article to request
Commingled.
commingling of the votes. One
Yes.
does not include that
I-
article,
I move that we approve the article that does not request a commingle.
the warning, without the article.
I move that we approve the warning, the version that does not request that we commingle.
Okay,
I want to keep things the way that they are.
all right, okay.
Which means that we would be
So
still
just
counting
discussion.
separately, but at the end,
Adding them up.
adding them all up in majority rules,
Well-
not
Yeah,
how we have already done it in the past.
How we did it last year.
Right.
It counts as a
yeah.
single thing. It's just a question of where they're being counted.
I think logistically, that makes a lot more sense. We already have all the ballots for the towns being counted in those places by those people. And it also does offer a really interesting data point for figuring out where things are going right and where they're not. But I may be ignorant as to the drawbacks of doing things this way, so perhaps if somebody who doesn't like it can tell me more what they think.
Well, I mean, we haven't been told to do this yet, so let's wait to be told by the state to do this, or learn more, and there'll be more public debate, so.
So you agree?
Yes.
okay. So there was a mention that Addison is misspelled at the top of the warning. It should have two Ds.
Okay.
Oh, that's part of consolidation. Two Ds are unnecessary.
I don't know that we need an amendment for that,
I
but,
It says draft.
I would like to have some discussion about Article 1.
Yes, I would also. Please.
I believe that Article 1 should be struck because,
But I think he's offering an amendment or a conversation.
it's a conversation that
discussion.
Yeah.
I will be more than happy to make an amendment if there is acquiescence to my point of view. We did not do those elections when we should have. The people were automatically carried through, and they will serve a term until the next annual school meeting. I see no reason to go through the process of redoing that. So I would offer an amendment that we strike Article 1.
Second.
Yeah. Yes, the amendment has been seconded. We can discuss it.
Didn't we already elect them in?
We elected them for the period of time that ended with our annual meeting back
Well,
in January or
When we elected them,
February.
we actually didn't indicate an ending time. So we elected them, we've never
And the,
unelected them.
and the way the law states is that until they are replaced, they serve. And so we don't need to go through that process. We should have done it at the annual meeting, but we didn't. So they're still automatically in office. I don't see any reason why we need to.
I support that amendment also for the reason that it says to elect the following officers for 1 year. And to me, 1 year would mean that term would then end next May, which
You don't
is
want to
going
have a second,
to not be
a second special meeting?
in line with our annual
We're
meeting.
going to
So
have a special meeting every year?
we're not having a special meeting again, simply for the purpose of
Right.
having people off alignment with the annual meeting.
So I'll call a question on George's amendment.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment to strike Article 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstaining, withholding? Okay. So the amendment passes. Is there any more discussion on the main article to approve the warning?
We do have an issue of dates.
We
Yes,
have the
we
issue
did.
of dates.
Also, question about minutes.
Question about minutes.
We have to change we have to amend the minutes from 2017, don't we?
We do.
And I'm not, I don't know how that should be done.
And I received some information today, but I did not have a chance to read through it all.
So basically, what your attorney is saying is that you can do that at a meeting. It does not.
At a board meeting?
Regularly board meeting. You do not have to do it at an annual meeting or a special meeting.
Really?
I know, that doesn't make any sense to
But
me.
if that were the case, that we needed to do it at the special meeting, it can fall under Article 2 to transact any other business that may legally come before said meeting.
Yes,
So
I think
We're
that
covered,
does
right?
cover us.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
So then the date.
The date.
you think you can work that out, Mark?
I can promise you this, there's enough people and probably animals that I think if I have a few days to do it, we're doing this right now, then, but I can't give that guarantee now.
So we could accept it with these dates, and then if it's not going to work out, we could reconvene a majority of this board to amend the warning. No, we don't have time. 30 days.
We're up against it.
When would be the 30 days?
April
April.
So April
We gotta go with
15th.
April
the
15th?
22nd for the vote. It's just a matter of do we want to have a week between them or a day between them?
Yeah, we got
I think
6
it- I
days
think
to
it's fine.
reconvene.
Do a week.
We've got 6 days to reconvene.
Right, April
pushing it
15th
out.
would be the 30 days?
So
Okay.
this question is that whether or not you can get people to preside over.
There is the Board of Civil Authority, which is the ones that count votes. There's the alderman, and it's the Justice of the Peace, and somebody else. And so there's a bunch of us, and so we could try and figure out who could man the voting booths, so that,
On the sewage day thing.
yeah, because
Yeah.
they need to stay at City Hall.
I think it's asking a lot of you, of a
board
But it
members.
would
board member
be
in your positions, and
tricky
a
to try
question
and
was
gather all
asked
that.
to,
I think
to
it'd
the
be
city council
easier.
people who know, and I think we should change the date. We should go ahead and change the date.
So have the voting on the 22nd.
And I think that the meeting should happen on the 21st. Let's do it the day before. The meeting on the 21st, the vote on the 22nd.
Of this month?
Or
May.
Did you
Say
say
sorry?
something about the superintendent search
Yeah, is
on
that
the
the one on the
21st?
board?
So if the,
It might be.
it might be, but if, it may not be. But the other thing is that if this is like a 45-minute informational meeting,
Yeah. Half
so,
hour.
so we could easily do that informational meeting on the Monday night, on the 21st, and then go to the board, to the interviews, should we have the opportunity to do it on that night.
Okay, but if the interviews don't happen on the 21st, we're looking at a regular board meeting on the 14th, an informational meeting on the 21st, and superintendent interviews on another day to be determined.
What did Bob say to you in terms of the 21st?
He said that we should not count on it at this point,
Okay.
that we need to be flexible.
I'd really like to keep this special meeting on the same night as our board meeting. It's
I
just
would too.
A lot of people juggling their schedules and everything's,
Right, but the vote,
and have the vote a week later.
yeah, I'm sort of with that, actually.
And I'll tell you that there's going to be confusion like there was tonight, because I notice here that it's being warned for being held in Ferrisburg. I understand that there's construction going on at the high school, and it needs to be someplace else, but you're going to run into problems with people not showing up because they can't find it.
All right, is there someone that wants to offer an amendment?
I would like to move that we amend this, what is it? It's a
Warning.
This warning to change the date of the informational meeting.
Oh.
No.
To leave the date of the informational meeting to be the same, but change the date of the vote to
May 22nd.
May 22nd.
Yes.
And that's what I would like to suggest as a movement.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank
All
you.
right, any more conversation? Can we call the vote on that amendment? All right, all in favor of informational meeting, May 14th, Australian ballot voting on May 22nd, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain? Okay, the amendment passes. Is there more discussion on this warning? We now have stricken Article 1, changed the date, fixed the spelling,
The time,
the time.
it's at 5:15, and we traditionally have problems getting people there for 5:15.
Because it's too soon to the close of the workday?
Yep.
We have a board meeting at 6.
Well, I will say that
Do you have
for
a-
council meetings, when we hold meetings in the middle, our meetings start at 5:30, and then, like usually around 6:30, we will recess, do the special, close the special, bring the meeting back into order.
We've done that before.
We
Yeah,
have.
we have.
Let's do that.
I move that we amend the warning to change the time of the meeting to be in the middle of the regularly scheduled board
Say
meeting.
What
like
time?
7 PM.
At 6:30. 6:30? 7? It's up to you.
We're gonna be, we'll be there anyways, so.
Yeah, this is a movement by together. To 6:30 PM.
Okay, is there a second for the amendment? Second. Okay. All in favor of the amendment to change the time to 6:30, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? All right. Any other conversation on this warning? There was a question about the location, or?
I just think that possibly when the warning is published, that you make a separate bold line about where the location is.
Like a double warning,
Yeah,
like the picture of something scary.
to make
people's
sure,
attention.
to make sure that people see that part of it.
Like a wolf.
All right, so,
The high school then?
I'm sorry, what?
No, we're in Ferrisburg.
Ferrisburg.
The meeting is in Ferrisburg.
High school's gonna be under construction.
All right, so I would like to call the question on approval of this warning. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
You're right, you're right.
Okay. I hope you guys, Gloria, I hope you got all those changes. All right, good job. All right, the next action item is to authorize attorney to review administrative contracts. So this came up because we were hiring for a superintendent, and it was brought up that it might be a good idea to have an attorney review the contract.
Mm-hmm.
But that likely will cost money. Yes,
I
go ahead.
move that we authorize an attorney to review administrative contracts.
I'll second that motion. We're
So-
crazy not to.
We're
So-
because we will.
I think I think the question is, all administrative contracts?
Who is that?
Right. But I think we just need clarification on that. Just, we could just do the superintendent, we could do, the central office, we could do central office and school-based administrators, we could
How many
do,
administrative contracts do we have?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Most of the central office and the building administrators are the same contract. We have, I guess, most of the contracts are the same.
Yeah, teachers, support staff.
No, administrative, yeah. But they're, the body,
The admin is all the same.
all right, so
I would say
maybe
all.
we should do them all then,
Yeah, do them all.
if they're only gonna have a sentence different here.
Then you're just going to change a name and the specialty, right?
Right.
Where they're,
Pretty much, yeah.
Have we done this before?
we have not done this before.
Okay, then
we
I
need to
support
It's
doing
been,
it
been a while.
now.
And do we have any idea how much this might cost us? And
I do not.
It would be on regular attorney fees.
Yeah.
George?
To make sure that our contracts are legally binding and appropriate.
they protect us. I mean, if we offer a contract to somebody and we don't have the wording vetted by an attorney, then a whole mess of different things can happen, most of them not good for us.
So these contracts were never reviewed from the start?
They may have been before I got here. I don't recall ever having the contracts reviewed.
They have been changed since they've been reviewed. If
Yeah.
they were initially, yes.
It's been long enough that we need to do that.
There's no guarantee that they were ever reviewed by a
You're right.
lawyer,
You're right.
frankly. I mean,
All right, well, I guess I'll call the question.
Okay.
Oop, Did you have something else to say?
The originator needs to specify all in his motion, because he didn't do that.
I apologize.
I already got that.
All right, so, those in favor of,
can I ask
Have-
one question?
yeah,
Are there job descriptions that go with these contracts?
well, there is with the superintendent.
Right. Okay, just putting it out there.
Those aren't part of the review of your contract, though.
Sorry,
That's an
George.
internal thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay.
So the contract covers the entire administrative staff.
Okay.
and then
So just to
George
clarify,
has a
we're being
question.
asked to vote on something when we don't have a number as to how much this will cost? I mean, could this be $50,000, $100,000?
Well, we have an hourly rate of the attorney, correct?
Yep.
300.
I'm going
300?
to guess, I'm going to say 300.
Right.
That's what he's been charging us for.
Keep going. So how much time are we talking
So how
about?
much time would it talk? A couple, can't imagine.
I mean, just an estimate. Let's get, just,
1,000?
A few hours?
so we're talking,
A couple thousand.
so then say up to $3,000.
Well, or, okay.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, maybe we could get a quote on this sort of work?
The problem is that we're running into a timeline here to go out and ask for a quote, get a quote back, make a decision based on that, and we've got at the very least, a new contract coming up for superintendent, and we want to be offering them what is a legally binding contract that's in the best interest of all parties involved.
That is the driving force, is to have the newly written superintendent contract to be reviewed before it's signed.
Just so that you know, administrative contracts go out in May.
Can we make a vote on this at the retreat on the 17th? You can call, we'll find out how long he thinks he's gonna.
You could?
We could table it until 17th.
We could table it, but we could also put a top boundary.
I support,
We could find out though.
But I
on the
support-
17th what that even means. I don't know if it's gonna take 2 hours or 10 hours.
we could, but we could also have them start the work and realize, and then reset the ceiling if we need to. But I support what John is saying. Like, we decide what cap we're comfortable with.
Are you
could be
making an
revised.
amendment?
I'm discussing.
Okay.
Is that
I now
that kind of thing?
would like to amend, I'd like to make a motion to amend the original movement, that we include a cap for a dollar amount.
And that amount.
And that amount is $2,500, not to exceed, without further approval.
Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Second. Okay.
And
Don't
the
want to,
driving
right?
force is, since we're getting ready to hire a new superintendent, we should just look at all our contracts, or is
Yes.
there
They're
some
very,
concern that
no,
there's-
not on my part. Okay. Yeah. Can we take a vote on that amendment?
George doesn't think it's
We
enough,
ask our
right?
business manager
No, I don't.
if that's,
Well, that's why we can redo that. It'll be enough for a week.
Yeah, it'll cover for a week.
So on the
And we can-
17th, we will
and we can
have
bump
better
it.
numbers,
Yep.
and then we can change
Sure.
it, but at least we'll have the number to start it.
Yep.
Okay, so all in favor of the amendment to cap it at 2,500, please say aye.
Pending, pending, right.
Okay, any opposed to that? Abstaining? All in favor of the original motion with that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Where's George? Oh, there he is.
He's there.
Any abstaining? Okay. Authorize superintendent to submit proposals, accept grants, and act as administrator of federal and state programs on behalf of the district.
So move.
Any conversation, questions? People understand what that means?
Yep.
We can let her do her job or not.
Great.
That's right.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approve appointment of superintendent screening committee members.
So move.
Can we name the members?
Go for it. It's in this pile of paperwork here.
I know.
Someplace in the
But it
72
should probably
pages.
be in the minutes. And it is on page.
Go ahead.
Oh, if you
Laura's
have
got
it,
it.
please. All right. Do we have a second on that?
We did.
We did, John.
Okay.
John.
All in favor of appointing those members, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Establish board subcommittee to review and select proposals for legal services.
So move.
Second.
Okay, so this is in regards to the RFP that we discussed earlier.
Yep.
Any more questions about that?
RFP for
For legal services?
so for basically our attorney then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And should we add to this motion the members?
I would
We're
volunteer.
establishing a board subcommittee.
Make it
We
a
got-
negotiation team.
George?
Right.
I'll do it.
Does it need to be separate from the negotiation team?
They could be negotiation
Just
doubled.
need people. Mark?
I think that's actually a good crew to have because we really rely on the attorney.
Okay, well, I'm on the negotiation
Yep.
team too, so I'm
You
on.
want to be on there? That's four. Anyone else
But I-
care to join the fun?
So just a question, before will be available on April 20, what do we say, 22nd? The Friday of vacation week, the 26th or 27th, could you check that out for me?
Vacation week
Always
doesn't mean
available for you,
anything to
Joey.
us.
Thank you.
The answer is,
27.
the answer is no, so please take me off. Thank you.
Okay, we're back down to three.
April 27th?
Yes.
What
At what
time?
Okay.
Before 3 o'clock, the RFP says,
All right, Chris
Before
wants
3
on?
PM.
Do we need more than 4?
No,
Well, stop.
he wants to do it.
No, no, not
Well,
yet.
I prefer the afternoon, but
Okay.
does that have to be
I'm on
in the very in the morning?
Good.
So I
Said
can make a
before
drop and
3,
mail
yeah,
there and come
I'm
back and then
good.
put mail there.
All right, so all in favor of appointing those four to that subcommittee, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Discussion items. All right, we're back to the gun violence prevention resolution. So, do we want to do anything? There's mental health. I mean, obviously, we're not going to compose something right here, but is our board interested in taking any sort of action on this or not?
Could we bring some potential proposals to the retreat and discuss more in depth there, or is the retreat already packed?
The retreat is pretty full. It's only a couple hours, so.
That's, you know, as long as you're talking about the retreat, I thought that our retreats were either a day or at least half a day. And when we start chopping them down and making them too small, then we don't accomplish anything.
Okay, but we're actually not talking about the retreat right
Oh,
now. We're
okay.
talking about
I was just
gun
asking whether or
violence
not we could talk
prevention
about this
resolution.
in more
Yes.
depth at the retreat.
You're right, though.
But we
I
could,
would say that we should consider signing on to the call for action to prevent gun violence in the United States of America by this interdisciplinary group on preventing school and community violence from the University of Virginia. That's not a motion, but it's me suggesting that we read it carefully. I think it's worth, I would vote for that, and I would bring it forward.
okay. Thank you, yeah.
Yes. It's broader and less specific. It has levels of things that we might be interested in that accomplish all of the comments that were made earlier, both at the level of prevention for individuals or finding support for those individuals who may pose a threat, support for Congress to provide funding and open up research into these issues. I think it's worthy of our consideration in some form.
And I did send the link to that out, correct?
Sue, did you look at the Sandy Hook Promise one as well?
I did not see a place where an organization could sign on. It was more actions that you could, like running meetings, and that's what I saw. I don't, did,
Resolution and more of a suggested projects.
yes.
Page.
I wasn't looking for projects. It's horrible. You know?
Yeah. Well, so we can't really vote on this now, but perhaps
No.
for next meeting, we could bring forward that proposal. I would support that, John, what you were saying. I have not read that resolution, so I would like to know if we're going to vote on it and then read it.
So there is a link to that resolution in my report that's
Somewhere
part of
in
the
the
packet.
emails, too.
And I sent it separately in an email as well.
So can we make it an action item on the retreat?
We could make it an action item either at our retreat or at our May meeting, yeah.
Our retreat is not,
Or is our May meeting sooner than the retreat?
no, but our
No.
retreat does
The
not
sooner
have
meeting,
an
yeah.
RETN person there. and-
Right.
And if we're gonna make a public statement, then we should make a public statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to agree
Well,
with
it's a
that.
public meeting, and then we could,
Right,
Put it in the
but no,
paper,
but, I mean, I know,
yeah.
Glory and Sue watch the RETN thing, but I think that it should, these are really the public meetings, so I would think that.
That's a good point, and
Yeah.
action items as part of the public meeting should be at your regularly scheduled meeting.
Right. And also, I mean, not that it wasn't sent out in February and then again in March, but
Right, that's
it'll
what
still
I'm-
give
that's
people
my
some
point.
more
It's
time
taken
to
us
read
3
through
months to
it.
do
Well,
this.
so the difference is that if we know that we're acting on it, some of us will be more likely to read one of these emails.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
It puts the incentive there.
I'm going to make everything an action item from now on.
That's what it takes sometimes. But don't dilute it.
Okay, so we will discuss that more in May then.
We've gained half an hour.
Planning for May board meeting.
That was really about the timing of the informational meeting and the May board meeting and how you wanted that all to flow, but it sounds like you made some decisions about that.
Okay. All right, so.
Do we,
What?
The May board meeting starts at 6 at Bearsford?
The May board meeting starts at 6 o'clock at Ferrisburg on May 14th, and we will recess at 6:30 for the public informational meeting about the vote, which will happen on May 22nd.
So we don't have to get there at 5:50.
And we have a retreat on April 17th.
Which is next Tuesday.
Right. Yes.
I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing student matter and administrative
Oh,
conduct.
just the student matter.
No, just student matter?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
just do one executive at a time.
Okay, I move that we go into executive session for the discussion of the student matter, which is confidential.
And we're going to invite the
Inviting
superintendent.
superintendent and Gloria.
No, not
Not
Glory. The principal and the special, and the, Kara.
Director of Student Services.
Thank you, I know.
Are we
I
going to
never-
go in the
don't
other
remember.
room?
We are going in the math room.
I second.
As stated, so moved.
I seconded.